So good evening, everyone. A warm welcome to Rushcliffe Borough Council's council meeting. I would like to remind everyone that the meeting is being live streamed on YouTube. A recording of the meeting will be available afterwards on the council's YouTube channel. In addition, under the Openness of Local Government Bodies Regulations 2014, other people may film, record, post on social media or blog from this meeting. The use of any such images or sound recording is not under the council's control. Any councillor who wishes to speak should raise a hand and your request will be noted. You'll be asked to speak in turn by me, and then you may turn on your microphone. Once you have finished speaking, would you please turn off your microphone? And please note that there will be a recorded vote for the budget item. When the roll is called, call is required, councillors' names will be called out alphabetically by the monitor officer, and please confirm your vote by saying for, against, or abstain. In respect of voting on any other item when asked by me, councillors should raise their hand to indicate how they wish to vote. If a roll call is requested, councillors' names will be called out as previously referred to. A councillor may raise a point of order to make a personal explanation at any time by raising their hand, and I will hear them immediately, and my ruling on the matter will be final. During the debate, if I stand up, any councillor speaking at the time must stop and sit down. Everybody in the room must be silent. And we hope to take a short minute break around after item 11. And move to the moment of reflection. And I've got the great pleasure of inviting Debbie and Andrew Mosley from Jasmine's Legacy of Dreams. I met them at Normanton-on-Soar Village Fete, and I thought what a great charity to come tell us all about it. So if you'd like to come and sit to, and when you're ready, press the right hand microphone button, please.
Good evening. We'd like to thank you for inviting us to come tonight, allowing us to tell you a little bit about our charity, Jasmine's Legacy of Dreams. Jasmine was diagnosed on 24th of October 2019 when she was just 18. She passed away just 15 months later, having enjoyed so much pain and torment, receiving 4 long courses of chemotherapy, a total body irradiation and stem cell transplant, all without success. But she didn't give up, and she never stopped living. Her smile and laugh would cheer so many of the nurses up on the ward. She had already decided that she was going to help others go through what she had, knowing just what a struggle it was. Well, that wasn't to be, as we lost Jasmine on the 22nd of January 2021. But we have taken that dream of hers on, and that's why Jasmine's Legacy of Dreams was founded on the 3rd of December 2021. Andrew and I, along with 5 trustees, continue to award requests to patients who have been referred to us via nursing staff, social workers, or even just recently, a friend of the family. We aim to help other teenagers and young adults between the ages of 13 and 24 across the East Midlands who may be receiving treatment or they may have completed their treatment. To give you an idea of some dreams that we have made come true this year comprise of a short breakaway for a young man and his family as a treat after grueling treatment for a brain tumour, a day out feeding giraffes at Woburn Safari Park as a surprise for a young lady on her 13th birthday, a weekend away for a young lady who at 13 had already been treated for a brain tumour and then received devastating news that she was now diagnosed with secondary leukemia. Being a Harry Potter buff, we included a visit to the Harry Potter world too. The family had the most amazing time and made so many memories. Her mum messaged us to say they are so thankful to those memories because just 4 weeks after her trip, she passed away. We bought an iPad for a patient who was struggling with time away from friends and family, allowing him to FaceTime them to help him through the day. We bought noise-cancelling headphones for a young man who needed to shut off from the day-to-day routine of the ward and go into his own place. The list is endless. Whatever the patients ask for, if it's possible, Jasmine's Legacy of Dreams will arrange it for them. If we can bring just a little light during what can be very dark times, then we have fulfilled our goal. All of this is made possible by fundraising and support of people who believe in us and what we do. We hope that by telling you about Jasmine's charity, you may be able to pass on our details to members in your community and spread the word of what we do. Thank you once again for giving us the opportunity to bring our charity to you here tonight. And we have actually got some leaflets, so if anybody wanted to take any after the meeting, that would be fabulous. Thank you.
Debbie, thank you.
Thank you.
And Andrew as well. You're most welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting if you wish to do so. Otherwise, you're free to go. Can you switch your microphone off, please? Thank you. What a wonderful pair. Yes. Thank you. Moving on now to item 1 on the agenda. Apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mayor. We've had apologies from Councillor Cotty, Councillor Gowland, Councillor Matthews and Councillor Sims.
Thank you. Declarations of interest. Anybody like to declare an interest in any of the items on the agenda? Oh. And move on to item 3, to approve and correct records of the minutes of the meeting of the council held on the 5th of December 2024. Councillor Clark, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Pleasure in moving those minutes.
Do we have a seconder?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy to second the minutes.
All in favour? Anyone against? Abstentions? Declare the vote carried. And move on to the Mayor's announcements. So I will keep it very brief, as I know we've got a lot of business to get through. First, I would like to give a warm welcome to our new Chief Executive, Adam Hill. I'm sure you'll make him feel at home here. Since our last meeting, I've attended 20 events as your Mayor, including many Christmas carol services across the borough and county. The biggest one was at Southwell Minster, where we were all given a candle as we entered the Minster. And just before it started, all the candles were lit and all the lights in the Minster turned off. With several hundred candles lit, it made an absolute superb atmosphere. It also made it difficult to hold a candle in one hand and a service running order in the other. It was also a challenge when standing up and sitting down, not to set the lady with very long hair in the seat in front of me on fire. And I'd like to thank all those who attended my carol service, which was shared with Gotham St Lawrence carol service, and in attendance was the High Sheriff and Deputy Lieutenant. Christmas week, I visited Rushcliffe staff at the depot on London Road and streetwise at Bingham, as well as staff here at the arena. Also that week, I visited Rushcliffe Oaks Crematorium. We were made very welcome by all, especially with the tins of chocolates they received. And then on Christmas Day, keeping up the tradition, I attended the Friary in West Bridgford and helped serve Christmas lunch. Having sat and listened to many folks and their stories, I went home to Christmas lunch and presents with my family, feeling rather guilty, knowing that many there would either have nowhere to go or return to an empty home with no one there. I attended Rainbow's Hospice at Loughborough together with Councillor Brennan, where we presented them with a cheque for £11,600. This was collected by Rushcliffe Oaks Crematorium with the kind permission of relatives, and was the proceeds of recycling metal and orthopedic implants following cremation. The scheme is run by ICCM, the Institute of Cemetery and Crematorium Management, in conjunction with Ortho Metals. And Rainbows will be attending as the moment of reflection in the annual annual council meeting in May. And finally, last Sunday, I was at Langer Airfield to witness Kerry Mooney exit a perfectly serviceable aircraft at 14,000 feet, raising funds for my charity, SAFA, a very brave lady. And I'd like to thank all of you who sponsored Kerry on her parachute jump. Thank you. And moving on to item 5, the leader's announcement. Councillor Clark.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I also add my welcome to Adam Hill. I was going to say the new Chief Exec, but running, he's hit the ground galloping. So I think perhaps he's already not quite so new as we thought he was. And when I say hit the ground galloping, because we have the local government reorganisation issue to deal with, as well as all the other issues that we are dealing with in the Borough Council. And that's really just a very brief update, Mr. Mayor, that the local government reorganisation discussion continues. The leaders have met several times, and press releases have been issued. And you will recall that there is an extraordinary council meeting scheduled for March the 20th, where there will be then more detail put onto the proposals that we will be taking forward. So that will be happening soon, but the work continues, and the work will continue over the summer period, because what we are proposing will only, in March the 20th, is only an interim list of proposals. They are not an actual plan as such. So the main submission won't be until the end of November, and so a lot of work will carry on during the summer up until November. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Item 6, and I welcome the new Chief Executive for his announcements, please. Adam.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll keep it quite short, but I did just want to thank everybody for such a warm welcome, coming in and making me feel already part of the Rushcliffe team. I've had a good opportunity to get out and meet some of you as councillors, either as your group or as individuals, and along with the team. So it's a real honour to be here and be part of Rushcliffe, and I look forward to working with each and every one of you over the coming months and years. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Adam. And moving on to item 7, I'm going to invite Mr. Bear. He's got a citizen's question, and he's going to ask Councillor Verdi his question. When you're ready, Mr. Bear, right-hand button on the microphone. You can sit down if you wish, if it's easy. If you wish to sit down, you can do, yeah.
I'm Rupert Bear. I've lived in Rushcliffe since 1964.
Can you just ask the question, Mr. Bear, please?
Well, I just need to say that this is a question about a very esoteric bit of council tax called the empty house premium. And
if you could just ask the question, please.
Well, the question means nothing unless people have it explained.
Just ask the question.
Please, will the council, review their decision to reduce the period from 2 years to 1 year before empty properties become assessed to the double council tax from the 1st of April 2024, and exclude properties which have been or are being genuinely marketed for sale or are being repaired following, for example, fire or flood.
Thank you, Mr. Bear. If you could
Large number of elderly people,
Mr.
and
Bear,
probate
no, just
cases.
stick to the question, please. If you just
Well,
switch
people will not understand the implications.
You're only allowed to ask the question. I'm sorry. And that's it. If you could switch your microphone off, I'll ask Councillor Verdi to reply.
Constitution that the
Mr. Bear,
council requires openness.
Mr. Bear,
Yes.
can you switch your microphone off, please? And I'll ask Councillor Verdi to reply.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Bear, for the question, and also for attending for council in person to ask the question. I answer as follows. The first point I would make is that in November 2024, a new statutory instrument was approved and is active from the 1st of April 2025. This updates the previous legislation and the policy approved by full council when setting its budget last year. The updated legislation relates to exceptions when the premium should only be applied after 12 months. The reasons for such exceptions are actively marketing a property for sale or let, or following probate, or if a property is deemed uninhabitable. In the case of the latter point, and a property being uninhabitable, it is feasible a property that's had a severe fire or flood, as you referenced, could have the exception applied as it is likely to be uninhabitable. Furthermore, in the case of severely damaged properties, there is also the option for the individual to ask the valuation officer to remove the property from council tax. This avenue has always been available even before the 1st of April 2024. Regarding properties for sale, the fact is the government has introduced the exception for 12 months, which is a period deemed reasonable for individuals to sell properties, and the premium applies thereafter. This is effectively the same policy the council has had in place since the 1st of April 2024, and therefore the council policy is consistent with current government legislation and is perfectly reasonable. The use of the legislation is one of the number of tools at the council's disposal as a means of encouraging properties to be occupied rather than empty. This was endorsed by our community scrutiny group on the 20th of July 2023. Given my earlier comments, we will not be increasing the period to apply the empty homes premium from 1 year to 2 years from the 1st of April 2024. Whilst I appreciate this may not be the answer that you wish to hear, it will remain council policy. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Verdi. And thank you, Mr. Bear, for your question. Councillor Verdi's answer will be in the minutes of the meeting in writing for you. Thank you. And item 8, petitions. We don't have any or haven't received any petitions. So we move straight on to item 9, business from the last council meeting. To answer questions submitted by councillors under standing order number 11, I invite Councillor Gaunt to put his question to Councillor Cumberlack, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, yeah, the question was from December, so I don't know whether I could have got an answer some other way, but I'd like clarification. So, please can I find out the total number of scrutiny matrices that was submitted by councils in the past 12 months for the consideration of the scrutiny panel versus the number of scrutiny matrices that made it through to the corporate overview group meeting for consideration, please.
Councillor Cumberlack.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Information on the scrutiny requests, formerly called matrices, was provided at the corporate overview last week, showing a full breakdown of requests, which were no doubt immediately passed to Councillor Gaunt by party colleagues, and should therefore have avoided the asking of this question tonight, saving council time and resources. 17 requests were made, with 6 taken forward, 7 were rejected by the group, and 4 responded to separately, having either been considered previously or not requiring full scrutiny, as being addressed through another forum, for example, LDF. Even my own request regarding procurement did not make the cut. Proof, therefore, regarding the objectivity and transparency of the process. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Cumberlack. Councillor Gaunt, do you have a supplementary?
Yeah, well, first of all, to clarify that was not my aim. My aim is to actually find out whether we're getting enough through. And if not, the second question is literally, it's not political in any way, shape, or form. It's to ask if there can be immediate or very quick training offered for people. Because we're not meeting the criteria, I think the councillors need to have the opportunity to learn how to fill in the paperwork correctly. So that was really the drive of my comments. It wasn't anything more than that. Otherwise, I could have asked a different question to follow up, and I've chosen not to. My question is literally, can we ensure then that if it is if we are incorrectly filling in the forms and they're not meeting the criteria, please can we have some training so that we all are able to do that? Because the scrutiny process is a really good way of digging in and getting ideas that we want bringing forward. So that would be really helpful if we can guarantee that. Thank you.
Councillor Cumberlack.
Thank you, Councillor Gaunt. The breakdown of requests and actions is a matter of record and I and officers will be happy to discuss further if needed. You may also request to attend at corporate overview.
Thank you. Move on to item 10 then, councillors, the 2025-26 budget and financial strategy. For this item, it is proposed that the speaking times to be extended to permit the mover of the report 15 minutes to speak and 7.5 minutes for the seconder and other group leaders. And can the meeting please confirm their agreement to this by a show of hands, please? Yeah, that's carried. Thank you. And I can now invite Councillor Clark to move, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Obviously, an incredibly important item that affects the whole of the borough that comes around once a year. So I have great pleasure in presenting this budget for the ensuing years 2025-26 and the medium-term financial strategy and accompanying appendices, Annex B, along with the Council Section 151 officers' authoritative commentary as Annex A. Much of my commentary focuses on the key messages in the Section 151 officer's statement, which dovetails with the budget strategy. Generally, as with all councils, we're always under financial pressure of some sort. Unlike many, we are not making service reductions and indeed look to continue and improve our services and to grow the borough. Our sound finances are backed up by having a virtually balanced budget over 5 years and up-to-date financial accounts signed off by the council's external auditors, usually with no qualifications, Mr. Mayor. Excellent governance is the backbone of any well-run local authority, and we know when governance goes wrong what the implications are, looking at especially other local authorities locally. This budget tonight that is being proposed does not just happen by accident. It's a result of a lot of very hard work. I will refer to the officers who have been working hard on it a little bit later. We have worked hard over a long period of time to ensure that we have a commercial culture, that we operate in a business-like manner. We generate financial efficiencies and are forward-looking. And this council has a history of being brave, but not reckless, and has not made some of the poor financial decisions that other councils have made. As a general comment, government funding this year is much poorer, whether through the financial settlement or issues with other funding streams, such as simpler recycling, which I will come on to. Our core spending power, which is the funding the government believes we should have based on council tax, grants and business rates, has only increased by 0.9%. This incorporates our council tax increase, which I will mention shortly. Across all local authorities, this figure is 6.8%, with the government redirecting resources to city and county councils, linked to areas of higher deprivation, and districts being the poor relation in this regard. The 0.9% increase relates to the National Insurance Contributions Grant, which at £123,000 is substantially less than the £300,000 this council has to pay with regard to the government's increase. This will also impact businesses and likely to lead to further costs when we transact with third parties. Just to reiterate that, Mr. Mayor, although the government has placed an extra burden on national insurance of £300,000, they're only reimbursing us £123,000. Bearing in mind inflation has been over 2%, this is a real terms cut in overall funding. We therefore have to raise revenues to ensure we continue to provide the best services and continue to invest in the council's assets so services can be delivered effectively. Rushcliffe has the lowest council tax in Nottinghamshire and is within the lowest 25% nationally. Some people refer to it as the lowest quartile. The Band D average gives an increase of £3.89 or 2.46%, increasing it to £161.77. As Councillor Verdi did state actually in the Cabinet meeting where it was first proposed. This is something we should all be proud of and not looking to discredit or marginalise this important fact. It is a shame some councillors seem in denial on this point, and I am expecting from others in this chamber an attempt to try and deflect away from the fact that this is the lowest council tax in Nottinghamshire. They may make efforts to confuse the public with other statistics, and we do know that well-known saying that relates to statistics, don't we, Mr. Mayor? I strongly believe that this has to be a very positive message to our residents and one we should all be proud of, indeed, as we should all be proud to be associated with. Such an excellent organisation and the excellent budget is testament to years of hard work by both officers and councils. Special expenses are detailed, and if we look at West Bridgford in particular, the precept compared to the other town councils remains low and amounts to around £1.25 per week, less than the price of 2 pints of milk. This remains excellent value given the range of assets and community events that we deliver to benefit those West Bridgford residents. I can detail the figures for a Band D council tax level for the special expense areas, bearing in mind and to note these are yearly figures, they're not weekly or monthly. So firstly, West Bridgford will be £64.84, a rise from £59.44 in last year. Keyworth will be £3.21. It was £4.69 last year. And Ruddington will be £3.14. It was £3.29 last year. Due to real terms funding reductions and rising inflation over the past few years, we do have a responsibility to balance the books. We have a transformation and efficiency programme, which is section 7 of the MTFS. It's £1.7 million over the 5-year period, focusing on areas like efficiencies in our leisure contract and further income in relation to green waste and car parking. Whilst these charges are increasing, they remain competitive compared to other authorities, and the focus of the car parking charges increase is on the longer stay hours to encourage more churn and more economic growth. It is not an increase across the board. Despite the financial pressures, we still have ambition and a substantial capital programme, a very substantial capital programme, Mr. Mayor, £27 million over 5 years. We continue to invest in our leisure and community facilities, Keyworth and Cotgrave Leisure Centre upgrades, a focus on climate change, for example, looking to acquire land for carbon offsetting, continuing to invest in the council's vehicle fleet, especially for refuse collection, and ICT to ensure we still deliver the best possible services for our residents. That is related to in section 9.2 of the capital programme. Our reserves, excluding New Range bonus, remain sound, with earmarked reserves projected to reduce from £11.3 million to £8.4 million over the 5-year period. Reserves relate to risk, both upside and downside, and the challenges the council faces. I refer to Annex A and the Section 25 statement, a legal requirement for the Section 151 officer to provide critical context for budgetary discussion and the resilience of the council's finances going forward. As stated at paragraph 4.3, the council is not at risk of exceptional financial support. Indeed, nearly 30 authorities have been granted this, if in fact you could call it maybe unexceptional financial support. As it is stated in the statement, and I quote, "The impact of the government's own spending review and thereafter the impact on local authority financial settlements for 2026-27 and beyond is a big unknown. The budget is sufficiently prudent and we also have sufficient reserves to ride the outcome of this. Going forward, there are undoubtedly significant challenges, not least what is the impact of local government reorganisation going to be. And we look forward to further discussions on this, as I mentioned previously, Mr. Mayor, and over the coming months towards the end of November. Excuse me. We have to ask ourselves other questions as well, Mr. Mayor, such as how will the government's impending comprehensive review and changes to the way local government finance is calculated impact the council and, more importantly, its residents? Will the new homes bonus be replaced? Is the financial pressure of housing growth or the incentivisation for more housing going to be provided by this government? What will the level of funding for simpler recycling be, and how long will this last? These grants that come from government are important to be analysed because the initial funding sounds fine, but there is always then an ongoing liability that once the funding, which may be for a period of years, 1, 2, 5 years, whatever it is, when that finishes, then that becomes a full liability on the costs of the council. What this medium-term financial strategy does is crystallise all of the above. Most importantly, as Rushcliffe currently stands today, it is in a relatively healthy financial position compared to many local authorities. We continue to maintain and deliver excellent services at a low cost to our taxpayers. The definition to me of what constitutes excellent value for money. What the future holds remains to be seen. We have a lot of projects underway. We have a lot of issues to resolve, not just the local government reorganisation. We're involved with development of the power station site and with the Freeport. And of course, we also are now liaising with the Mayor of East Midlands in the East Midlands Combined County Authority. So, in summing up, Mr. Mayor, and I mentioned the officers earlier, I would like to thank both councillors and Councillor Verdi has put an immense amount of time into liaising with the officers, and it's the officers led by Peter Linfield who have put in so much time. And that's what I said at the beginning. These things don't just happen by accident, Mr. Mayor. They involve a lot of work, a lot of analysing, and indeed final tweaking and fine-tuning, without which then this would not become a superb budget. So this all helps the council navigate its way through what will remain, I'm sure, choppy financial waters, and as we head towards both potential local government reorganisation and the reform of public sector finances. So with that, Mr. Mayor, I have much pleasure in moving the recommendations at the bottom of page 17. So it's the recommendations A through to I, which starts on page 17 and finishes on page 18. I'll move those recommendations. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. And do we have a seconder for this? Councillor Verdi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy to second the motion Councillor Clark has just outlined and reserve the right to speak. Thank
Thank you, Councillor Verdi. Councillor Walker, Jen Walker.
Thank you. And is this where we put up our alternative budget? Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening. First of all, I'd like to thank Peter Linfield and his team for their support in helping us put forward this alternative budget. Is it coming up? No? Oh, okay, because it's been circulated. Thank you. The detail in the proposed budget, as well as our alternative, show the high-level effort that's required for councils when setting a budget. Our officers and others who choose to work in public service keep us safe, and without them, the important work of this council, or any other council for that matter, could mean real risk to our residents. The officers and us as members should have pride in our collective efforts being made for this common purpose. Public service is clearly still attracting really good people. The ethos of this organization can be gleaned from the pages of this budget. Our alternative shows an ethos towards one of a common goal through public service. A reminder that being a successful council is more than a balanced budget, but also an opportunity to recognize the challenges ahead and act with confidence to future-proof our organization, so that choices to remain a lean operating council today mustn't impact future generations. Our two proposals help this council build in citizenship and the common good. A way to equip this council to deal effectively with the challenges ahead, such as an aging population, increased need for an underfunded system, local government reorganization, and also a growing distrust in politics. After years of public sector hollowing out, budget setting is one of the few skills left at Rushcliffe Borough Council, and they're virtuosi in it. But we don't live in a silo, and budgets need to exist and be relative to the outside world. The demands for increased funding to local government are still being made, but are being drowned out by global affairs, and they fall further down the list of priorities. This council is looking for major assets to be identified for disposal, but once they're gone, we will struggle to get them back. However, when polled, people still say they want state-owned assets. If we sell off the family silver to make ends meet today, we would be denying future generations access to civic buildings, parks, and facilities we have all been beneficiary of. We'll be pulling up the ladder and giving no means of asset security should they find themselves in difficult financial times. Our role at this council isn't merely to balance a budget. We have a statutory responsibility each year, but we do need to re-engage with the principles behind our budget. We also need to think carefully about our language around tax and don't partake in a race to the bottom in terms of taxation, but rather engage with our residents so that they can see the necessity of taxation. Rather than feeding the anti-government small state narrative, we need to focus on those who depend on our council's intervention, like those individuals we are targeting through this alternative, who need their homes updating to stay out of hospital or to live independent lives. Parsimony with public money shouldn't be an end in itself. If we're going to pride ourselves on our prudence, it should be for a purpose. A true economy is one that is strategic and thinks ahead. Will making savings on our disability grant fund tonight reduce the need to invest in it in the future? Probably not. This budget is also a working example of the relationship between members and officers. Much trust is put into the Council's Section 151 officers' estimates on the robustness of the budget and the adequacy of our reserves. This trust also extends to the relationship between the Council and its residents. What could be viewed from the outside as rubber stamping would erode the trust residents put in us to read and scrutinize effectively, and is part of our commitment to those who voted for us. The centuries-old trust the United Kingdom has built up in its public sector can be quickly lost, and we should do our utmost to refrain from the creation of unnecessary fog or confusion. Trust can only be maintained through transparency and honesty, and the responsibility of maintaining that hard-built trust should come through all we do, especially in our communications to the public. Budgets can pose different questions, and it's right that we should explore these different options. It's an opportunity for opposition groups to influence studying of the council's budget, and we have two proposals that have been sent out ahead of this meeting and the reasons for their inclusion. So I'll mention our two alternatives for your consideration very briefly. Firstly, I ask for this council to further commit to the Disability Grant Fund because of increased costs and need, often due to Rushcliffe's ageing population. The key to understanding our inclusion of this item brings us back to the points we made last year. Rushcliffe Borough Council's unwillingness to even consider having council-owned social housing. Where other councils have used ring-fenced housing revenue budget, we are required to fund our residents' need despite their homes being owned by registered housing providers, once again showing the imbalance and unintended consequences generated by this way of running council affairs. Secondly, to fund a community governance review for the residents of West Bridgford. With the prospect of local government reorganisation looming, we need to begin to take a proactive action to ensure that we protect democracy in our district. Unlike the other parish areas within Rushcliffe, West Bridgford has always been represented through the borough. This is not the time to debate whether West Bridgford has been well represented in the most democratic way or not, but we need to consider the likely disappearance of all district councils, including Rushcliffe, and see that West Bridgford will not be left with a big democratic deficit if we do nothing. This proposal is not only acknowledging the reality of the situation, but bringing it to the public forum and offering a solution before the opportunity is missed. Consider it Rushcliffe Borough Council's parting gift to some of its residents. I ask that you recognize the timely need for these two proposals and vote against the first budget and vote for our amendment. Thank you.
30 seconds, thank you. Timed it just right, thanks. Councillor Gaunt, do you wish to say second this?
Yes, I'd like to second this motion, is it?
Yes, yes.
But reserve the right to speak.
Thank you. In that case, I call on Councillor Thomas. You wish to speak?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to thank our officers who continue to manage our finances prudently. Rushcliffe's affluence and the ongoing bounty of the new homes bonus do make it relatively easy for Rushcliffe to bank huge amounts of money and balance the books. So, on the whole, we don't find much to object to in this budget. We do fully support the First Amendment in the alternative budget. While we agree that the DFG should be fully funded by government and appreciate that Rushcliffe doesn't, on the whole, we don't find much to object to in this budget.
You said that without moving your lips.
Shall I carry on? I don't know where I got to, really. Okay. So we do fully support the First Amendment to the alternative budget. While we agree that the DFG should be fully funded by government and appreciate that Rushcliffe doesn't appear to be getting its fair share in Nottinghamshire, Rushcliffe is affluent enough to afford this. If there is concern about the impact over a number of years, the allocation can, of course, be reviewed annually. Allocation of money to West Bridgford projects continues to exercise our minds. Not all the expenditure for these projects appears to be allocated to the West Bridgford special expense. So it's no wonder that our residents continue to feel that West Bridgford gets a better deal than the rest of us at our expense. Of course, West Bridgford residents feel quite the opposite. So it's high time for West Bridgford to have a town council of its own, or to be divided into parishes, so that this situation is resolved. Going into local government reorganisation, this issue becomes even more important if West Bridgford is to retain an identity of its own. We therefore wholeheartedly support the second amendment in the alternative budget. Page 82 of the council report allocates £70,000 to a capital project to install "Welcome to Rushcliffe" signage on 8 key routes into the borough. While I support the idea of promoting our tourist attractions, I can't personally imagine that trying to promote Rushcliffe itself as a tourist destination represents good value for our residents, given the impending demise of Rushcliffe as an entity. "Welcome to Rushcliffe" signs appearing just as Rushcliffe vanishes will surely open the council up to ridicule. So I ask for assurances from the portfolio holder that this project will be axed and the £70,000 reassigned to more worthwhile causes, which could, of course, include either of the initiatives proposed in the alternative budget. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Councillor Mallender, you wish to speak on behalf of the Greens? Richard Mallender.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I was just speaking on the amendments that have been put forward on the budget at this stage. Certainly, yes, we're supporting the first part, the disability funding there. We think that's an excellent thing to do. On the second part, on the town council, well, it's mentioned the motions of the parts where it mentioned the local area forum. So I've been chair of the local area forum for about 10 years now, which is quite a scary thing. But other borough councillors have held that position before, including former Mayor Barry Cooper, who sadly passed away just over a year ago, I think now. We used to meet in town in County Hall. Used to have admin support. Even used to have funds for grants at one point. And we've got members, including representatives from health, community, environmental, business, conservation groups, police, fire, ambulance, public transport, as well as the borough and county councillors for West Bridgford. We share information between groups. We have guest speakers, including the former leader of this council, former councillor Simon Robinson, Mick Burrows in his role as the West Bridgford Commissioner, Paddy Tipping when he was the West Bridgford Commissioner, and Paddy Tipping when he was the Police Commissioner for Nottinghamshire as well. We're often consulted and we respond to consultations or enable our constituent groups to do so. We are an entirely voluntary group and we actually do quite a lot. But we're not a town council. And in statutory terms, we lack even the powers of the humblest parish within Rushcliffe. And perhaps that's all the people of West Bridgford want. But times are changing. And if Rushcliffe Borough Council disappears, subsumed within a larger unitary authority of whatever boundaries, then democracy moves further from local people. Given that likelihood, it would make sense to consult on bringing to West Bridgford that local level of democracy enjoyed by the rest of the borough and initiating a community governance review on creating a town council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mallender. Councillor Bird, do you wish to speak? Councillor Bird?
No.
Thank you. Then I'll... Councillor Birch, do you wish to say anything?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And first of all, I would also like to thank the officers for all their hard work, and in particular, Peter Linfield. A sincere thank you to you. Whenever we approach you or your department with any queries, you answer them in detail and promptly, and that is sincerely appreciated. And we're very lucky to have first-class officers at this council. So what a shame it is that we have a second-rate Conservative administration. And I say Conservative. I'm not quite sure that's the right word to use. I do not see a coherent ideology underpinning your decisions whatsoever. I genuinely don't. And I'm a former Conservative member. I do not see. And once the fog of the bombast and the bluster and the boasting clears, at the end of the day, this budget raises taxes. It promises to raise taxes for the next 5 years. It drains our reserves. There's a 28% decline over the next 5 years, leaving the council exposed to future shocks. We're raising special expenses in West Bridgford by 9%. We're raising garden waste collection fees. We're raising parking charges, which is going to impact high street businesses, so many of which are in distress already. And you are making it harder for local businesses by penalising and disincentivising people to go out and spend their money in the shops. You're supposed to be the party of business. you're supposed to be the party of business. And I do note there is not a penny in this budget now or even in the next 5-year medium-term plan for a car park in Bingham. Not one penny has been set aside. Now, I think I've touched a nerve with Councillor Clark, judging by his opening statements. He referenced a quote. That quote was from my speech last year, which is from the famous Conservative, Benjamin Disraeli. There are lies, damned lies, and statistics. And I stand by that because I truly believe, which is understandable, you know, judging by the electoral situation you find yourself in, that you're going to present a one side to suit you, and you are selecting statistics. But you have boasted about this council being in the lowest quartile for tax with no qualification, no context, no explanation at all. So very briefly, I would like to provide that context to residents. So tonight, we are talking about 6% of our council tax bill. The Rushcliffe Borough Council element is 6%. That's an important 6%, but it is a fraction of the overall tax that our residents pay. And when you factor in what the Conservatives at County Hall do, which is 3/4 of our council tax bill, we are in the top 5% of boroughs for overall council tax in the entire UK. We are one of the highest council taxed areas in the whole of the UK, and that context is very important. The context about us being in the lowest quartile is also very important, and I don't mean to, you know, talk this council down. I'm just trying to speak facts. I'm just trying to be honest with voters. We are an affluent borough. We have huge advantages that other district and borough councils don't have. We are 14% of the county's population, not including the city, just the county, 14%. And this 14% of the population here in Rushcliffe has 29% of the Band E council taxpayers, 37% of the Band F council taxpayers, and 40% of the Band G council taxpayers. We are so blessed. As I said last year, we have won the local council lottery. And at the same time, as having a large tax base, by virtue of the fact, just an accident of geography and an accident of demographics, we have a massive tax take. Simultaneously, we have lower overheads than other councils. Our service expenditure, that is to say, what we spend on offering services, providing services, and on infrastructure, is substantially lower than other boroughs and districts. We spend, for example, £6.3 million per year less than Newark and Sherwood. So we've got a higher tax base and lower overheads. What you are doing tonight, Councillor Clark, is the equivalent of a gambler sitting at a poker table, getting dealt a royal flush on every hand, and then boasting about their financial acumen when it is nothing more than blind luck. Our residents pay more than £628 per year per dwelling, more than some other councils in Nottinghamshire. We have the highest council tax per dwelling overall in Nottinghamshire. On top of that, we've had £20 million of new homes bonus, and we've generated £30 million in land sales in recent years. Come on. So I would like to thank Labour for bringing an amended budget. And as I said last year, we haven't. It would be farcical with a group of 2 councillors out of 44 to bring a budget. It would have wasted resources, hundreds of hours worth of councillor time, and it would have been very silly. But Labour, as the official opposition group, I'm absolutely supportive of their amendment. And I really wish we could have debated this as a separate item to give it its due sort of time. But just quickly on that, I do sympathise with so much of it. And in particular, I do agree there should be a town council in West Bridgford. I think the more democracy, the better. So I will not be voting for this budget that raises taxes on hard-working residents. This budget is an insult to Conservative principles. It's an insult to hard-working residents. And I'm appalled by the complacency and the arrogance that I've heard already tonight. I hope that Councillor Clark and his colleagues would have heeded the message that Rushcliffe residents gave them last July. Apparently not. This is an unconservative budget by an unconservative party. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Birch. Councillor Della, do you wish to speak? No, in that case, then I'll call Jonathan Whelan and open it up to discussion. You made what you wanted to speak.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Of course, I stand up to support our budget because And we've heard already, people don't like the figures being said, but let's be absolutely clear. If a resident has a house here in Rushcliffe, wherever band it is, if it was anywhere else in Nottinghamshire, they would pay a higher council tax. And that's the fact. And so people can try and mess around the figures all they like. It's not Rushcliffe residents' fault that other councils decide not to build houses and give us the housing target instead, or build other types of houses and blame the fact that, Leafy Rushcliffe has got too much money. Well, it's up to their councillors and their council to decide what they want to do. We decide what we want to do here in Rushcliffe, and our residents should not be penalised for the fact that they live in a fantastic borough that they do and have a fantastic, well-run council, which they do. And the fact is that we are managed to keep our council tax again the lowest in Nottinghamshire and one of the lowest in the UK. And actually, when we talk about high council taxes, I do remember before the Conservative control of County Hall, we had the highest council tax, one of the highest council tax residents in the country, and that has come down every single year over the last few years. So that actually shows the progress made under Conservative at both levels of the local council. Despite the reduced funding, as Councillor Clark mentioned, and the fact that we have been penalised by the government for success and rewarding failure of City Council and other councils, we're still able to invest over £27 million in services and keep our council tax low and deliver for residents. The fact we are debt-free also shows that our money goes on services and not servicing debt. We talk about business support. You go down to Westbridge Central Avenue, I don't think there's an empty unit. And so we say about supporting businesses, what we're doing is supporting them in terms of keeping the car parking balanced. The last thing you want to do is create a blockage where the people are there all day. And we've already seen that in Bigham in terms of the moves done there. But also the fact is, when you go down there, you've got businesses who are investing in their units. They are spending, unfortunately, our money. You've seen Vision Express recently. You've got the Donuts, a company closed to refurb, investing money in West Bridgeford when they are closing units elsewhere across the county, because I've been to all over the county with work, and the car parks haven't did 2 hours free parking because you get no one in their town centres. Hours are full. Go down to West Bridge on a Saturday and see if you find a free car parking spot, because you won't. So the council tax, what is on the council tax bill for residents, shows the fantastic level of support they're getting for the money that they are paying. If you look at a council like Ashfield District Council under Ashfield Independent Control, highest council tax in the UK, despite freezing council tax for, we could say, gimmick just before local elections. What I would say is, I really welcome the investment made into leisure. Copgrave, Bigham, Edwalton, Russia Country Park in Runnington, and of course East Leek will all be benefiting out of this budget, and shows that we deliver a budget for everywhere, not just certain areas. On to Labour amendment. First of all, well done for bringing an amendment, despite other parties not doing so. I do applaud you for doing that. For the DFG grants, I'll obviously let my colleague Councillor Upton speak, but I will acknowledge the fantastic work him and officers have done in terms of making the case for Rushcliffe to get more funding from the government and from the pool from other councils, which is where the money should be coming. Now, West Bridgeford Town Council, I mean, I'm amazed to hear Councillor Birch talk about, council tax being too high, and then wants to effectively support an amendment which for West Bridgeford residents would increase the precept by 72%, according to an estimate in the financial comments. That's not us saying that, that's the financial comments been put into there. And the fact that this year alone, you will see an extra 5% increase just for doing a consultation. And we talk about town and parish councils. Only 2 parish councils had elections at last time we ran the elections, because not enough people want to be councillors. And you've got major towns at the moment. I think Copgrave's at 4 vacancies, I think. That's what have you got there? At the moment, we've got them all across the borough. And so we talk about democratic deficit. Actually, for West Bridgeford residents, they've got the most democracy, because they've got full slate of councillors here. They've got various committees that to look after West Bridgeford. Goes through cabinet, scrutiny, and full council. So actually, I think it shows there's more democracy in West Bridgeford than there is elsewhere in Rushcliffe, apart from the 2 parish councils who had elections. So well played to them. And we talk about the fact of West Bridgeford that, from having to put in a town council in place just shows, as we go into local government reorganisation, the amount of time and effort that would take, and we do not know what the future will be of local government. So in terms of spending all this money now, without knowing what the future will be of council at the moment, is to make madness. So overall, we will support the budget that we are putting forward. Labour budget with £3.2 million of spend, take out our capital reserves. Again, coming to Councillor Birch's point about well run, we would take a lot of our capital resources and put this council in a bad financial place if we support the amendment. So that is what you'd be voting for if you support the amendment, as opposed to our budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wheeler. Councillor Upton, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to comment on Councillor Jen Walker's proposed amendment number 1, which is to increase the Disability Facilities Grant budget to the level of annual demand and to restore the discretionary element of the DFG provision. I thank you for that proposal. Let me be clear. This administration is supportive of providing financial grants to facilitate adaptations to properties, to help people with disabilities to continue to live in their own homes, and to help people to be discharged from hospital as soon as is reasonably practicable. We believe that our track record in doing this is good, albeit there are a few cases that do take some time to achieve due to specific issues. Indeed, we are very mindful that the delivery of mandatory DFG grants is a statutory requirement. But although finance is important, it is not the only factor in achieving this goal. There are real issues about the availability of specialist staff to specify the works required, the increasing complexity and cost of many adaptations, and the number of specialist contractors that can do this type of work. Financially, demand is outstripping the grant that we get from the County Council, who, as the administrators of the Better Care Fund, give us a grant based on a government formula set back in 2011, and we get less grant than any other district in the county of Nottinghamshire. Given this financial situation, we now only award mandatory grants up to 30,000 and no longer give discretionary grants. It was partly because of this that I wrote a letter to Angela Rayner last year, and in December, I feel like Neville Chamberlain, 1939, those that remember it, she said, "Thank you for bringing to the department's attention the issue of the DFG allocations formula and your concerns around the disproportionate funding, increased demand for DFGs in the Rushcliffe Borough Council area, transparency and administrative burden. I note your recommendation for a review of and a change to the DFG allocation formula. I can confirm that the government is keeping all aspects of the DFG grant under review, including the allocations methodology. Any changes which require additional funding would, of course, be a matter for consideration at the next government spending review." That was December the 23rd when she wrote to me. And so it was a result of that letter that Councillor Jonathan Wheeler and I recently took part in a Channel 4 news report, I don't know if you saw that, where we highlighted the need for more money and more grant. Rushcliffe has put an additional £700,000 into the budget, the DFG budget, in the last 3 years alone. But this is not sustainable. A change to the government grant formula is what is required, and I'm looking to Angela Rayner to deliver on what she said in her letter to me. That said, the government has recently allocated more funding for the DFG grants, and it's recently been agreed that Nottinghamshire districts will pool their uncommitted DFG funds and distribute to districts such as Rushcliffe, where demand outstrips the budget allocation. These are significant and, frankly, very welcome changes. We do not believe that this proposed amendment to increase the DFG budget to the level of the annual demand and to restore the discretionary grant from this council's finances, my apologies, is currently appropriate, deliverable, or sustainable. We note that the government is keeping all aspects of the DFG grant under review, including the allocations formula, and we believe that this council's focus should be on getting more grant resource from central government and any surplus within the Nottinghamshire District Council allocations, rather than using scarce Borough Council capital resources. Regarding the comment about DFGs and Rushcliffe, quote, rebuilding its own housing stock, this, I maintain, would put a significant operational and financial risk upon this council, and this is not something that we are looking to do. I will not be supporting this amendment, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Upton. Councillor Polenta, please.
Tonight, we debate the budget, a document that should not just balance the books, but reflect the values of the community it serves. A budget is not just an accounting exercise. It is a moral statement. It says who counts and who doesn't. Labour's alternative budget is built on a simple principle. Public services must meet public needs. We reject a model that leaves the most vulnerable behind, turning accessibility into a privilege instead of a right. Our proposals focus on two key areas. I'll mention them very briefly. Ensuring disabled facility grants meet local demand. Housing is more than a shelter. It is a fundamental human right. Yet, for too many disabled people, their homes become places of struggle rather than security. The current approach to disabled facility grants in Rushcliffe creates a two-tiered system. Those who can afford adaptations live independently, while those without financial means are left behind. The social model of disability teaches us that it is not impairments that disable people, but the barriers society creates. Inaccessible homes are one such barrier, forcing disabled residents into unnecessary hardship, dependence, and even hospital stays. Our amendments proposes increasing the DFG budget to fully meet local demand while restoring the discretionary facility grant. Every resident, regardless of income, should have the ability to make their home safe, accessible, and fit for their needs. Looking ahead, we must move beyond reactive fixes. Accessibility should not be an afterthought. Our housing strategy must prioritize universal design, ensuring all new developments are built to be accessible from the outset. Specific provisions must be made for those with mental health conditions, diverse perceptual systems, survivors of domestic violence, asylum seekers, and other marginalized communities. Housing is about dignity, equality, and human rights. Moving very quickly to the second element, initiating a community governance review for West Bridgford Town Council. I heard the comment about the cost. I don't think democracy can be monetized. It doesn't have an exchange value. West Bridgford still remains the only unparished area in Rushcliffe. Each resident deserves a direct say over local funds and services. A town council would bring decision-making closer to residents, allowing for faster responses to local issues and a greater say over public services and public spaces. It would strengthen local democracy, ensuring our community has the representation every other part of Rushcliffe already has. So we ask this council, will you give West Bridgford residents a voice in their own governance, or will you continue to deny them this fundamental right? So that is only the start. We need to go further than that. We need a broader vision of local government. Councils should not just be service providers, they should be engines of democratic transformation. Labour's approach is rooted in democratic accountability, public ownership, and social solidarity. Budgets should be shaped by the people through participatory budgeting, people's assembly, and collective decision-making. Local government must engage with those directly affected by public services, the trade unions, the women's groups, the local parents, the residents, the community networks. Public services should be publicly owned, run in partnership with workers and community, not private firms. This is not just a debate about figures. It is a debate about our values, our responsibilities, and the kind of society we want to live in. We have a duty to ensure no one is left behind, that every resident has access to the support they need, and that local democracy is real, vibrant, and inclusive. This isn't radical, it's responsible. It's about putting power where it belongs, in the hands of the people who live and work in our community. Yet today I'm very pleased to say I'm voting alongside my colleagues for the Labour alternative budget, a budget we co-construct, putting a first step towards a broader vision for local government, and adhering to the axiom that politics done collectively are much better than politics done individualistically. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor Polenta. Councillor Grocott, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, a significant number of members here met at the combined Community and Growth Scrutiny Committee in October last year to discuss the challenges of securing sufficient accessibility adaptations to meet the growing needs of Rushcliffe residents. It was clearly an important issue for the council to see fit to convene that group that looked at both the Disabilities Funding Grant pot, which is forecast to be entirely spent by 2026 before it is replenished by government, and the current planning policies around accessibility requirements for new housing developments. The only significant action from that group was for officers to ask some of the other Nottinghamshire councils for their unspent funds, and I do welcome Councillor Upton's update on the matter. It would be good if the details of the precise amount of funding that will be redistributed to Rushcliffe and how it impacts the amount of grant funding that could be awarded to individual residents who apply for the fund could be circulated to members here. We also did lament the arguably out-of-date funding formulas and grant limits, and I also welcome Councillor Upton's efforts to get more funding from central government. But more ambitious actions that would meet the demand in Rushcliffe and which are in the council's power to undertake have not been considered nor taken forward, which is evident within this budget presented this evening. The council has not considered the decision to top up the DFG pot of funding so it doesn't run out. The allowance of an additional top-up grant, which allows residents applying for the fund to receive more for each grant award so they can meet the costs of these adaptations as they are today, not over a decade ago when the parameters of the grant fund were set. The council is not considered to either raising council tax or making savings elsewhere to fund these actions. And let me be clear, deciding not to do either is a political choice which disproportionately impacts lower income disabled residents that desperately need these adaptations to continue to live independent lives. The correlation between councils that build and manage their own council housing stock and also have significantly underspent disability facilities grant pots, because as Councillor Jen Walker has said, they use their housing revenue account, which is of course based on the income the council receives from its own tenants, has not been factored in. If the current administration wishes to maintain its hallowed commitment to not raising council tax, surely building our own housing stock, even with the risks described by Councillor Upton, is the best way to avoid that while still being able to fund the accessibility needs of some of our most vulnerable residents. Now, I know the members opposite will say, oh, this again, we've discussed this. Why do Labour keep raising this issue about building our own council house? The Labour Party met with our new chief executive recently, and I'd like to reiterate my own and my party's welcome to him this evening. I asked generally if the council should consider revisiting previous motions if new information should emerge. The chief executive answered that would depend on the issue at hand, and with an answer like that, he'd do well joining us in the members' seats here at some point, if he ever fancies it. But surely the evidence presented at the Combined Growth and Community Scrutiny Group constitutes new information that means the council should revisit the past decision and at least conduct a feasibility study into whether or not it should build council housing. So if these two reasonable proposals by our party and the amendments we've made to the budget are not supported this evening, I can't support it myself and will be opposing it accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Grocott. Councillor Calvert, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to just join the chorus of support for the West Bridgford Town Council being established. The Labour group recommends a community governance review to establish a West Bridgford Town Council to be included in the 2025-26 budget at a cost of 70 to 90k. This level of funding would include 2 rounds of mailing to all West Bridgford residents. Also, it's worth stating that there is nothing unique about a town of 40,000 creating a new town council. South Kesteven, the district council, did so for our neighbouring town of Grantham. Then they commenced their work in 2022 and they already had their first meeting in 2024. Since 1974, local government reorganisation, when West Bridgford lost its urban district council, it's not had any formal status as a parish or town council, and this is not acceptable. There is strong support to address this anomaly for several reasons. Firstly, many very local issues about the future of West Bridgford are ultimately made by elected representatives from outside the area. Secondly, the West Bridgford Local Area Forum, which Councillor Mallender has talked about, was established in 1996 It comprises elected West Bridgford County and Borough Councillors, representatives of other public sector organisations, local community groups, local voluntary organisations and local businesses. It has been able to function very successfully in an advisory capacity but has no decision-making responsibilities. Thirdly, Borough Council consultation with residents, businesses and stakeholders is currently at best sporadic. Recent examples of inadequate consultation include the public realm improvements on Central Avenue in West Bridgford and the statement in the Council's economic growth strategy to progress the pedestrianisation of West Bridgford following the public realm work. The Council has since backtracked by acknowledging the need for feasibility studies with partners in public consultation, so it is no longer, as was described in the economic growth strategy, a fait accompli. Fourthly, the scale and scope of West Bridgford Special Expenses Precept is ultimately decided by the Borough Council with very limited local consultation. Fifthly, and this has been referred to already, there is an additional and urgent need to address the anomaly which arises from the current local government reorganisation. It is likely that West Bridgford will no longer be under the control of a borough council with a population of around 120,000, but a more remote unitary authority of around 500,000. It's proposed that parish and town councils will continue to look after local matters and probably have an enhanced role. This could leave residents and businesses in West Bridgford with an even greater democratic deficit. The Labour group acknowledges that there will be costs involved in establishing a new town council for West Bridgford and will work with the Borough Council to keep these to a minimum. However, we think the Borough Council is honour bound to put right the fact that for over 50 years, 1/3 of its population has been denied what 2/3 of its population have benefited from. That is a parish or town council, which provides them with a democratic voice and this is very important, a structure for taking community action, which West Bridgford does not have at the moment. The Labour group implores the Borough Council to immediately commence a community governance review to establish a town council for West Bridgford and not let it be hung out to dry
30 seconds, Councillor Kelly.
as a result of further procrastination. Early consideration needs to be given to the precise boundaries for a new council, and we need to ensure that the voice and identity of West Bridgford is not submerged even further. Now is the time to consider how our residents will be represented at the most local level. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Calvert. Councillor Chaplin, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to say a few things about different aspects. So first of all, I wanted to say something about the management comments about the proposal 2 of our amendment about the pedestrianisation of Central Avenue. We were told that there has been no consultation because no schemes have been put forward yet. That is a mismatch between what I think of as consultation and obviously what these management comments. For me, consultation means as soon as you've got an idea, as soon as something might be happening in West Bridgford, you get together people who are involved, you talk to them, you ask for their ideas. It would be great if the residents of West Bridgford actually owned any changes that take place rather than a consultation where they might be given 2 or 3 options to vote for, which they will feel are being imposed on them and they will have no ownership of. Also in the management comments, I disagree with the assertion that running a consultation now with everything else that's going on may confuse people. I think people are already confused. They're very confused about who provides which services, and this would be a good time to explain to everybody exactly what's involved in local government reorganisation, exactly what we're going to be changing, exactly how it will affect them. And the fact that management comments show concern that people are going to be confused does make me hope that there will be efforts made to explain to people clearly what is actually going to happen with local government reorganisation in a clear way. And then I just want to talk a bit about the budget. I want to bring attention to the huge benefit this council gains from having large amounts of Section 106 and SIL monies, which it hangs on to, as alluded to by Councillor Thomas. In Annex B, Table 18, the Treasury assumptions, there's an expected interest of investments for 2025-26 of £1,434,900. With the given anticipated interest rate of 4.06%, this makes a total invested of £35,342,365 to the nearest pound. I may have retired, but I still like a good maths problem. What I couldn't find in that, and it may be that I just didn't see it, but I did try and go through every page, is I couldn't find how much of that is Section 106 and SIL money. So it's very difficult to actually judge what the effect of that is. In the capital programme section of Annex B, paragraph 9.2 states that there is £4.8 million available for affordable housing, which has been profiled for the last 3 years of the programme. I wonder why we're waiting to spend this. It's certainly not because we don't need affordable housing. I also wonder why the £918,000 in the Climate Action Reserve is sitting there when action needs to be taken now. I'm sure the people whose houses were flooded would prefer that we'd spent it now. This council is very proud to be debt-free, but as stated in that same paragraph 9.2, cash flow balances are strongly underpinned by the holding of developer contributions. No wonder this council is in no hurry to spend on the vital infrastructure that residents are crying out for. Without this money to invest, it would be much harder to remain debt-free. Residents should be made aware that their much lauded low council tax bills depend on money not being spent on the infrastructure for all the new houses that have been and will be built in Rushcliffe. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sue Mallender, please, next.
I'd like to thank the officers first, Mr Mayor, for doing all the very hard work, both for the budget and the alternative amendments that have been made, which I fully support. And I'm going to say something controversial now that everyone will hate me for. I actually think that it's not a good thing to have the lowest possible council tax, because what does that actually mean? If we look at countries, which are the happiest and most well looked after countries in the world? Which are those people? The ones with the highest taxation, because they get from that strong social foundations. They get strong social benefits in exchange for their taxes. And it's the Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development that's saying this. So that's a known fact. So actually, I don't think it would be a bad thing to very slightly increase the council tax, which some people seem to be saying that which we are doing, but you know, that I don't see that as being a bad thing. I don't think it's a bad thing to spend money on people that need money spent on them. So if there are people, and there are, who are disabled in Rushcliffe who need money spent on them, then we should very well do so. And it's it's also a good thing to have some control over council houses, to have our own social housing, because it's no good relying on developers if they'll go crying to the government. I don't know whether it will work still, but say, oh, we've got a financial viability and we can't possibly build 30% affordable homes, even if affordable actually meant social rent, which it should do. So it's no good relying on the private sector. We need to do it ourselves if we want to really have social housing and housing for people that really need it. Also, as far as the West Bridgford situation is concerned, recent research in the Big Issue actually shows that 84% of people feel powerless. That's gone up from 71%. And that's a lot of them feel completely disenfranchised. They say on the doorstep, everyone is the same, with some notable exceptions. And it's not just the people opposite. The government itself is cutting welfare and aid to spend more money on defence instead of raising taxes. So please don't see it as a bad thing to spend money to help people. It's not. And it's not a bad thing to spend money to make the people of West Bridgford have greater democracy. Because as other councillors have said, when and if this ridiculous reorganisation comes in, which most local government people think it is ridiculous, then in that case, the deficit of democracy in West Bridgford will be enormous. We need to have a town council in West Bridgford to have some accountability, for them to have some councillors to have that accountability. So I'm sure I'll be very much shot down soon by suggesting such a terrible thing that people might want to pay to help other people in our society. But that's what I think. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Mallender. Councillor Brennan, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's just a few points that have been raised that I'd like to respond to, if I may, Mr. Mayor. I'm absolutely delighted that we had our first economic growth strategy for the borough. I don't recognise the accusation that we don't care about business in this borough council. We have our first economic growth strategy. The entire strategy is about attracting investment, supporting local businesses, enabling facilities from small, medium, growing on to large companies. We have the airport and we have the power station site, all of which is about bringing in investment, supporting local businesses, green businesses and skills. So I don't recognise the idea that we are not doing anything for business. It's just simply not true. In that growth strategy, we talk about tourism. This is one of the priorities of the combined authority of the East Midlands Mayor, which we fully support. And there's much more we believe can be done to promote tourism within the borough of Rushcliffe. And I disagree with Councillor Thomas that Rushcliffe is vanishing. We're not vanishing. We have been here for thousands of years. Rushcliffe is a place, it's an ancient wapentake, in fact, a historic part of Nottinghamshire. And just as other areas in Nottinghamshire wish to promote their particular offer to tourism, to tourists, to bring money in, to support local businesses, such as Robin Hood Country and so on, I believe that letting people know they're in Rushcliffe, the home of sport, the home of history, the home of the wonderful little museums and places that we've got to visit, bringing them in, keeping them here, letting them stay longer, spend more cash in our local business is a great thing to do. And I'd like them to know they've entered Rushcliffe, because at the moment it's very, very difficult to know when you do. And I think that's even more important if there isn't a Rushcliffe Borough Council. Absolutely important that within a much bigger geography, those very important historic elements of our patch are visible, people can understand them and they know where they are. So I make no apologies for that. I also think that investing in our high streets and village centres is another crucial part of our economic growth strategy. And I hear what's said about West Bridgford, there was a lot of consultation on West Bridgford. It wasn't broad public consultation because there are as yet no specific proposals to consult on. The West Bridgford Growth Board considered the pedestrianisation of the avenue time and time again. I walked the streets, I believe, with Councillor Plant to look at West Bridgford High Street, what could be done. So whilst there was not members of the public, there were bus companies, there were county councillors, there were local councillors, there was the West Bridgford Forum, there were disability groups, plenty of people where we discussed the idea, feasibility and possibility and design, and local businesses as well, very many local businesses, for the prospect of pedestrianisation, but it remains an aspiration. There is nothing to consult on at the moment. It's about making sure it's feasible before we go out and ask people what they would want. So I disagree there was no consultation. Formal consultation would come if and when formal proposals were being put forward. And the final quick point I want to make is I didn't recognise this disposing of the crown jewels, disposing of assets. I don't know what assets we're disposing of. In fact, I can see us spending considerable amounts of money investing in our assets, such as the community hall in Ed Walton and our leisure centre. So unless we're referring to council housing stock that went many, many years ago, that we are not divesting ourselves of civic assets. I don't recognise that. So it's not in our growth plan. It's not in our budget. So I just wanted to address those points. I fully support our budget. I'm very proud of our budget. I think we're doing a very prudent job with managing our resources and still attracting businesses and supporting our people across the borough. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Brennan. Councillor Rex Walker, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I actually will be brief. And I rise with an air of nervousness because I think I may be missing something. And if I am, I will apologise in advance for that. But something in relation to the West Bridgford Town Council proposals. And unless I'm mistaken, the 2007 Act contains provisions by which a community governance review is automatically triggered and must be done by gathering together of sufficient signatures on a petition to do so. And I would suggest that if that's the case, then that's a good way to test the extent of feeling and the amount of democratic deficit and all the kind of positive things that we heard by going out and getting the signatures. And I go a bit further to say that if anybody wants a bit of advice on getting a successful petition together, then perhaps my colleague sitting to the right here might be able to give them some good advice.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Councillor Perrett, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be supporting the budget proposed by the Conservative group. I won't repeat the points which are already covered by my colleagues, but I would like to highlight an important fact. Residents of West Bridgford pay less in council tax compared to those in Ruddington, Cotgrave and Radcliffe-on-Trent, all of which them have parish councils. Despite this, our residents continue to benefit from excellent local facilities such as our well-maintained parks and public spaces. I also welcome the investment in Ed Walton for a community hall. I do not believe that West Bridgford should have a town council. Introducing one would place an unnecessary additional financial burden on residents, as we have seen in nearby areas. Creating another layer of local government would add bureaucracy and cost without delivering clear benefits. The current system works well, providing high-quality services whilst keeping costs lower for residents. Why should I repeat, why should our residents pay a 72% increase in their precept with no guarantee of any better services? I have residents tell me that this council does a fantastic job for them and a big fear is joining Nottingham City. I was speaking to a small business owner recently and she was grateful for all the support that she's received from Rushcliffe Borough Council and the Rushcliffe Business Partnership while she was setting up her business. This budget proposed ensures that we maintain these high standards whilst keeping costs lower than in comparable areas.
Thank you, Councillor Perrett. Councillor Leslie Wade, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to a couple of comments on what Councillor Brennan said. We know it's a Rushcliffe whopping take, but we weren't brave enough to pronounce that, so thank you for that. And what you said was all about business and other things like that, but not much mention of people. And the amendments that are proposed here about people. And it's all very well lobbying the government to increase the funding for DFG, but that'll take a long time. And in the meantime, there's people at home tonight who can't get upstairs to the bathroom, can't find a bed to sleep in, disabled children who are being carried about by their parents because there's no facilities for them. And I hope when you'll go home tonight to your comfortable homes, you might think about that and maybe have a change of heart about how we distribute our grants to people like that. In terms of the West Bridgford Town Council, yes, they pay lower rates and have wonderful facilities, but my guess is that a lot of that's supported by the money that comes from the other parts of the borough. I am not a resident of West Bridgford, and in fact, apart from coming here, I rarely come into West Bridgford. But I do wholeheartedly support the idea that the residents of West Bridgford should have their own council and be able to determine their own future. And with the local government reorganisation being so much up in the air, nobody knows what's going to happen, but it seems fairly certain from everything that I've read in the press today that we're going to lose our Rushcliffe Borough Council. And although the people in West Bridgford are getting good service from the Borough Council as it stands now, what is going to replace that when the Borough Council has gone? I would suggest nothing. So possibly we should look at this happening now because it's going to take a lead time for anything to happen, and waiting for the Borough Council to disappear and leave the West Bridgford residents in limbo will be too late. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Way. Councillor Chewing, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tonight, we're asked to approve a budget that burdens residents while failing to deliver real value. Families are struggling with the cost of living, yet this administration is pushing for a 2.46% council tax hike and a 9.08% rise in special expenses for West Bridgford, while raiding reserves just to balance the books. The financial outlook is grim. Business rates income will plummet by 46% in 26-27, and the new homes bonus vanishes in 25-26. Yet instead of securing stability, this budget relies on uncertainty. Just tonight, Councillor Brennan stated that she doesn't recognise the statement of diminishing our crown jewels, as in the assets of this budget. However, the paper stipulates that the reserves will drop from 11.3 million to 8.4 million, mainly for the organisational stabilisation reserve to balance the deficit. It's in the paper. Then this still doesn't plug the hole. There's still a forecast 5-year deficit of £0.172 million deficit. Is this really wise? This isn't a financial prudence, it's a ticking time bomb. And then there's the misplaced spending priorities. £1 million on land for carbon offsetting without proving value for money. I fully support tackling climate change, but there are more effective alternatives. Every penny should be spent wisely, yet this budget fails to prioritise what truly matters. Let's take parking charges. This administration claims to support local businesses, yet these hikes target anyone staying over an hour. Shoppers, diners and visitors. But even Councillor Brennan just a short period ago made a statement again around supporting businesses. Is supporting businesses increasing West Bridgford parking fees? 1.5 hours from £1.70 to £2, an 18% increase. 2 hours from £2.50 to £2.80, a 12% increase. 2.5 hours from £3 to £3.50, a 17% increase. This punishes residents already struggling with costs and risk driving away footfall from businesses battling rising expenses. If this administration truly backed business, it wouldn't push punitive parking charges. Now to the alternative Labour budget. One frustration is that we can't debate their proposal unless the original budget falls, a failure in scrutiny and time to debate change and alternatives. I strongly support the discretionary disabled facilities grant, which would cut the devastating consequences. Last year, at the budget meeting, I spoke of a resident forced to endure bed baths for months due to a lack of adaptations. Since then, waiting times will no doubt have worsened. This is also about Westminster's failure. Rushcliffe receives the lowest DFG funding in Nottinghamshire, based on an outdated 2011 formula. The Parliament Under Secretary for State for Homelessness and Democracy admitted this in a recent letter in response to concerns raised by myself to all our MPs. Whilst they have increased funding and they are pooling resources for the county, it still does not plug the gap of the previous government funding cuts from the Conservative administrations of past. This Conservative-led council has a power to restore the discretionary DFG, but refuse to act. That choice traps vulnerable residents. On housing, I support bringing council housing back under local authority control, rely on housing associations while using our own funds to adapt their properties. If we had our own stock, rental income could fund these adaptations rather than subsidise them with providers. However, I cannot support spending £90,000 on a review into West Bridgford Town Centre. I respect town and parish councils and encourage residents to push for one, but through proper democratic process. If West Bridgford wants change, the power lies with the people, not the council impose it from above. A petition signed by just 7.5% of electors can trigger a review. No need for preemptive council spending. I urge residents and councillors to use their democratic mechanisms available rather than allocating funds unnecessarily. This budget fails to support the most vulnerable residents while creating financial risk for the future. It raises council tax but fails to secure long-term stability. It ignores the needs of essential DFG funding but commits significant sums to uncertain projects. Rushcliffe deserves better, and I urge councillors to reject this budget.
Thank you, Councillor Chewing. Councillor Gordon Wheeler, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Mention has been made this evening of our officers. Well, let me mention them as well. And thanks to them, we're having to work against a backdrop. And I thank you, Sir Mallender, for your ridiculous government reorganisation proposal comment. Also, thank you all, as well for speaking so honestly today. I may not agree with you, but you spoke honestly from the heart. So thank you for that. So our officers have a very challenging time. Yet we have two amendments in front of us, which is going to substantially increase their workload if it goes through. Thankfully, I hope this will not go through. The Labour leader, I think she's getting so very confused actually with the City Council, which she talks about selling off our assets. Councillor Brennan already mentioned that a while ago. They're having to sell anything they possibly can because they have to, because they're a financial mess brought about by inept management. But on the other hand, the Labour leader has said, they don't need Rushcliffe. Great news, but let them go and tell the government they don't need us anymore because they're doing so well now. What she fails to mention, thanks to a huge amount of government money going to the Labour administration there. Let them go and tell, let our MP tell the government that Rushcliffe no need to be part of the city. Let them get off the fence and say that. You put it all in your leaflets. Say Rushcliffe should stay where it is. That's what you should be saying. We want to stay where we are. We're doing all the right things, and hopefully we will be listened to. Sorry, I'm speaking. You can have you go. You had you go earlier on. We are investing.
Are you asking for a point of order? Councillor Wheeler.
Hi.
Thank you. Thank you. He's suggesting things I've said that I haven't said.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Wheeler, please stick to the point and.
Sorry, Chairman, I think I was sticking to the point.
Try not to say anything that Councillor.
I just thought that the leader was actually talking about Rushcliffe selling all his assets, which is where I was coming from. Didn't you say that? If you didn't say that, well, I think
we'll just have one conversation, please.
As well. Anyway, we'll move on. We're investing in our communities at Walton, Gillingham Carn Pavilion, Buckgrave, Keywood, Eastleigh. We're doing all of those things. You stole my thunder when you talked about special expenses. You're absolutely right, though. Of course you did. Thank you, Anthony. But you're absolutely bang on what you were saying. I've been in very discussion groups where special expenses were mentioned, and time again, we said, look how much the special expenses are going up by. And here, what do they want to do? They want to create a town council, especially expenses are going to go through the roof. It makes no sense. So the whole budget put forward, the alternative budget, be kind enough and call it that, makes no sense either. So I'm very, very pleased to say I'll be supporting our budget. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Walker, you will have your right to reply when you do your summing up. So that's okay. Yep. Councillor On, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm fully supportive of this budget because Conservative-led Borough Council is investing thousands of pounds into Rushcliffe. Residents of my ward are very happy to learn that the council is investing in West Bridgeford facilities. This includes Graythorn Park, the drainage improvements on the Compton Acres watercourse, and facilities they use, including West Park, Boundary Road, and Bridgeford Park. Mr. Mayor, while other councils, such as Labour-led Nottingham City Council, look to cut services and investment, we are delighted that Conservative-led Rushcliffe Borough Council continues to invest while remaining debt-free and delivering the lowest council tax in Nottinghamshire. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor On. Councillor Liz Plant, please.
Oops. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to say that I have been on this council for a very long time with a bit of a gap, and I don't think I have ever heard so much discussion on the needs of our most vulnerable residents in Rushcliffe, and I think I'm really pleased to hear that, whatever the outcome, obviously, of the vote. But I'd like to thank officers for the very exceedingly thorough report, and to comment on the transformation and efficiency plan for 25-26, a little document in the report that often gets overlooked. This plan aims to support the delivery of 7.6 million in efficiencies through additional income for services and savings to discretionary spending by 29-30. I'm pleased to see that the term reducing waste, which was on last year's transformation and efficiency plan, has been replaced by the word savings, but this still amounts to the same thing, i.e. cuts. These include £25,000 from Positive Futures, an organisation that helps young people who are at risk of social exclusion, a further £15,000 reduction to the grant to parish councils for public conveniences. Additional income is to be raised, as has been mentioned already, by increasing car parking fees for longer stays, that is over an hour, in West Bridgeford car parks. This will impact most West Bridgeford car users, as shopping, having a coffee or a meal, visiting the dentist, hairdressers, etc. invariably takes more than an hour and could well impact on the vitality and the economy of businesses in the town. The cost of the green bins is to increase by £2 and a £5 increase for a second and subsequent bin. And this is at a time when it was reported in the last corporate overview group that there has been a significant drop in garden waste tonnage collected. 10,783 tonnes in 23-24 compared to only 9,190 tonnes in 24-25. This increase in cost is unlikely to improve the garden waste collection rate. Many residents may well choose not to have a green bin at all. The aim of the Transformation and Efficiency Plan is to achieve the planned savings, and I quote from the report, without significantly impacting on service quality or resident satisfaction. The only measurement of customer satisfaction is the three-year yearly resident survey. The latest survey, which was done in the summer of 24, was discussed at the last community scrutiny group. 1,334 responses were received. That was 200 more than the previous one, but that is approximately 1 to 2% of the population of Rushcliffe. The survey states that 61% of Rushcliffe residents are satisfied with the way the council runs its services. By no stretch of the imagination can this 3-yearly resident survey be a real indicator of resident satisfaction with council services. Once again, the Conservative group's increase in council tax for a Band D property is set at 2.46%, is the lowest in Nottinghamshire and the lowest quartile in the country. The Transformation Efficiency Plan for 25-26 is due to make a total of 825,000 in efficiencies through cuts to discretionary services, increases in fees and charges, and other service efficiencies. I know from knocking on doors across Rushcliffe and in conversation with residents that many would be willing to pay more in council tax for better statutory and discretionary services, and that could really improve their satisfaction rates with the way this council runs its services. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Plant. Councillor Upton, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be very brief. I just wanted to clarify yet again the Section 106 monies that's been mentioned. They are not our monies. We are the banker, if you like. We hold them on behalf of third parties. Third parties request the money.
Councillor Upton, I'm afraid you've already spoken, so you've got no right to speak for a second time. Sorry.
You did ask me.
Yeah, my fault as well. Councillor Reagan, please. It's been a long night so far. Councillor Reagan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I shall try and keep this brief, although I have a few points. Also, I'm standing to support the budget this evening that my Conservative colleagues have put forward. I have a couple of points. Jen Walker talks about disposal of assets. I'm unsure which assets she's mentioning. Perhaps we could get a list afterwards. And Councillor Thomas, given your IT problem, would welcome the increase in the ICT budget this year. The main point I want to talk about is DFGs. So I think obviously Councillor Upton has put forward a response, but I don't think we are strongly opposed as a group to supporting residents and giving them a right to home accessibility, as Councillor Polenta pointed out. I just think this is the wrong forum to do it. I think it's something that should be brought to a different forum, and I think you'll get a different response. We all support our residents. We all want to see them in housing. We all want to see that they are comfortable in their own housing. I think we as a borough can support them, and I think we should support them. So I'd be certainly in favour of some sort of investigation into that and to support Councillor Upton's work on that so far. I've got a few other points, but I think that generally that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Councillor Reagan. We're going to take a short adjournment now for legal reasons, for a legal debate, and intend to use this as our comfort break. So if you could be back in 5 minutes, please. Just waiting for one more person to come back, then we'll begin. Okay. Anybody missing? There's one missing over there, isn't there? No, no, everybody back. We're a little quiet, please. Councillor Ellis will continue, please, with.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have a couple of points to make. But the first one is that the members opposite have been very strong in their criticism of this budget. And they have really hammered home that they would like to see more expenditure. They want funding for this, funding for that, finance for this, finance for the other, without any recognition of the economic realities. It's colloquially known as the money tree, the magic money tree, and it doesn't exist. So I will support this budget because it is eminently sensible. It continues the prudence with which this council has been run, and it is going to make the future of Rushcliffe more secure than it would had the opposition been in power. My second point is, as a Copgrave resident, I arrived in Copgrave just under 9 years ago. It was a little bit of a rundown place. The precinct was terrible. It had behind it some terrible blocks of flats, which were old, decrepit, and very.
Point of order. Relevance to the budget.
Sorry?
Relevance to the budget with diversion to talk about things in the past.
It is very relevant to the budget.
If you could stick to the budget item, please, Councillor Ellis.
It is about the budget. Copgrave has, since I've lived there, has enjoyed significant investment from Rushcliffe Borough Council. We have a modern hub. We have refurbished sports centres. We have local officers having moved from unsuitable premises in the sports centre to a much more convenient position in the precinct, all thanks to Rushcliffe Borough Council investment. So I am 100% behind this budget. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ellis. Now, if nobody wishes to speak, I'm going to go straight to Councillor Gaunt, who reserved his right to speak. Councillor Gaunt.
Oh, yes.
Okay, thank you. That took some doing. Okay, right, thank you. I haven't written a lengthy speech because no one wants to listen to someone prattling on for 15 minutes. So about statistics and stuff. So I'm not going to do that. What I was going to do though was just thank everybody actually, because I mean I hope you were listening to the what was said on this side. There were some very good speeches by all the councillors from all the different groups, and some really good additions and things said by Councillor Wheelers, Councillor Upton, the guys at the back. Thank you as well. It's fantastic. And obviously Councillor Brennan and Councillor Walker, thank you. Because all those things that you've said, apart from the negative stuff about our additions, is that you are in support of the budget. That, broadly speaking, I disagree with what you said there. We're voting for the budget. We're just adding to the budget, yeah? And the additions that we're adding, there's 2 additions, have been worked through with the finance team and have been costed. So it's not the magic money tree. I don't know where that is. If you could point that to me, it'd be brilliant because I'd love to find it. Yeah, I'd like a seed. So, but apart from that, I mean, obviously, when you're talking about the West Bridgford Town Council and Councillor Walker's point, obviously a petition yeah, long term, that kind of sounds like a great idea, a good thing. But we've got an emergency situation really, where the deficit will occur very quickly. So we're trying to speed things along. A petition can be a good thing, I think, as long as the facts in the petition are right and that you know who it's from and you know where to answer it. I've had residents speaking to me saying that they couldn't find it anywhere on the Rushcliffe Borough Council website. They're like, well, that's because it's not come from the Rushcliffe Borough Council, but lots of people think it did. So just to move away from that for a second, if we're going to do a petition for the locals, that's a good thing, but we need to speed things along a little bit. Obviously, right now, you could just support these two amendments, which are fully costed. One, which is going to help our poorest members, right? It's not poorest, our most needy members. We've suggested all the good reasons why that would be, and the councillors over there actually supported the idea of that. It's being brought now because it needs to be paid for, and it's a budget. Yeah, so that's how we would pay for it. But you haven't put a press release out yet. I've had it confirmed that the press release isn't ready. We don't go into meetings with a press release already written, so we don't need to worry about that. What we can do is add in these additions, and then we can release it in the morning, and you guys can present a press release that shows a budget that not only meets all of the needs that you guys have put in it, which is excellent and well worked, but you can add in two little things that are fully costed that will help our most needy members of our community, and will start to address the democratic deficit in West Bridgford, which we've heard has been around since the 1970s and since the last Wapentack disappeared, right? You could call it the West Bridgford Wapentack if you like, right? So as far as I'm concerned, all we're doing here is we're all agreeing that we're sort of supporting, apart from a couple of members, the budget, because we need a budget and there's good things in it. There are bits we don't like, but we're in general agreement on that. And we're adding in two little things that will help the people the most that is needed right now. There's nothing controversial and there's nothing to stop you doing it, unless you've already decided you don't want to do it. So this discussion should have been helpful because you've heard from all these fantastic people saying great things and you've agreed with many of the things that were said. There's nothing to stop you doing it. It would be an absolute shame if you chose not to help those people, as you said that you'd like to go into discussing doing that. So let's just vote for this amendment. Let's get it all sorted. Let's get on to the next item and let's go so that we can actually get the democracy done and stop just filibustering and stopping it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. Councillor Jen Walker, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, it was a good debate. It was interesting because I think all our alternative shows it's quite interesting and kind of actually made this debate a more interesting debate. And a lot of what was spoken about was those two things that we have brought to the table. And it's backed by most of this side of the table, which is, again, quite interesting because we aren't all aligned politically at all. Yet there's a common thread in these two suggestions, which is one, helping those people that need it the most, and B, recognizing that something has to be done for West Bridgford. It has to be done. And stopping it here would be a silly thing to do because ultimately we have to look at it before local government reorganization. And it would just be a political maneuver not to. I just want to also contextualize the kind of the talk of the percentages. So this 5% increase for the year that it's going to happen, that's like less than 1p. It's so minuscule. It's so small. It's 5% on the 6% that we collect as Rushcliffe Borough Council for West Bridgford. So the 72%, which would be something like 5 pence. So these are not 72%. Sounds like this categorically humongous figure. It is not a big figure, and I would actually, if we were honest with the people of West Bridgford, I think you'd find that they would go, absolutely, I'd like to have that, rather than have no representation for that extra little bit of amount. So I think, again, it's this kind of idea of honesty and trust. And are we being honest with our figures when we are putting those kinds of messages forward? It doesn't really come across that way. And I do need to actually bring up the pact. I do wish councillors would read the budget because it is on, two people called me up on it, but it is here on black and white, page 21, 4.2R. The level of capital receipts will slowly rebuild by the repayment of the capital loan, but will only significantly increase if major assets are identified for disposal. Okay, it's in the budget. Yes. But that's what I was talking to. I was talking to that statement saying if we were to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Councillor Verdi, you reserve your right to speak. Please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You've allocated me 7.5 minutes. I think I need 7.5 hours, actually. And I fear we've realised a lot of Mark Twain's concerns about statistics, but I'll go through this as quickly as I can. Councillor Walker, you referred to future-proofing the council to deliver for years ahead. Absolutely. You also referred to us racing to the bottom. Well, I can certainly agree we're future-proofing this council for the future. We are certainly not racing to the bottom, we're racing to the top. That's evidenced by the fact we've been nominated for Best Council of the Year in terms of how we manage our finances. We propose a council tax increase within this budget because it's based on a rational framework to increase our income where it's needed, whilst recognising the cost of living for our residents, which is why we are not increasing it as much as we potentially could. Your alternative budget suggestions have already been debated and discussed. I'm not going to say very much other than we look at all proposals, we look at all options, and again, going back to your point about future-proofing, we consider it high risk. We consider some of the options high risk. If anything, they might point us to a section 114 rather than us being stable and financially resilient, which is what we are at the moment. Councillor Thomas, you talked about the bounty of the new homes bonus, almost as if we've won the lottery. No, we haven't won the lottery. We don't rely on the new homes bonus to be financially resilient and sustainable. We've made prudent decisions. We are commercially minded. We look to the future. We raise revenues where we need to. And we have a transformation program which releases efficiencies. And going back to some of the points about all of that money flush being just sitting in our pots, it isn't. It's reallocated in your efficiencies. Just as an example, Homes for Ukraine this year, 148,000. DFGs, 200,000 this year has been additionally earmarked for that. So when we have in-year efficiencies through the transformation program, which has realised £7 million over recent years, we use them. We don't just leave the money lying around. Councillor Thomas, you referred to the £70,000 signage. You asked me a question specifically. I think Councillor Brennan has already answered it. It's about our economic growth strategy, and it's about the place and not about the council. So I'm not going to say much more than that. Moving on, Councillor Birch, you talked about raising taxes. You talked about depleting reserves and about us being in the lower 25% quartile. Yes, we have increased council tax. We're not playing games. We're not freezing our council tax like other councils who have deficits forecast in their finances. We produced a balanced budget. We are investing in the future whilst we deliver efficient services. I'm going to go back to one specific point you made about Rushcliffe having a high number of properties in the higher tax brackets. Well, higher value properties, yes, we have got. Inevitably, it will have a higher council tax intake for us. But this is a truism and nothing earth-shatteringly new. Rushcliffe has residents that expect high-quality services. A few districts, I think, can boast having 5 leisure centres, as we do, and actually our unique demographics in terms of Rushcliffe having a large rural area, we have additional costs, which we also absorb. We are less urbanised, and leading on to that point, we have a less business rates income coming in. In fact, if you look at us as a borough, and if you look at our council tax take, together with our business rates take or baseline, we're actually number 7 in the district in terms of our funds that we have to deliver our services. We have 9.5 million, and the top 3 have over 11 million pounds, 11.3 million, which is New York and Sherwood. So yes, I would agree we have a larger tax intake for those reasons, but that doesn't mean to say we're flush with money. And certainly our reserves, which are there, the majority of them are 106 monies. We are bankers, as Councillor Upton said earlier on, and that money, the bit which is not 106 is actually either earmarked reserves against future-proofing, which Councillor Walker was very concerned about, and also it's enabling us to have some working capital to pay our day-to-day bills. In terms of your reference to a royal flush, this is not a royal flush. It is planned. It is diligent decision making. It is prudent decision making. We have a commercial outlook, and we balance our budget, unlike other authorities. We heard about asset stripping. I'm glad to say we're not asset stripping, unlike some of our other neighbours here. I'm not aware. Perhaps our finance officer will correct me, but I don't believe we've disposed of any of our major assets recently. If anything, we have invested, as my colleague members have actually highlighted in all sorts of things. So it's not a royal flush, but using your analogy, I would just go back and say, well, perhaps we've played our cards right and we've got to this position. Not a royal flush at all. Overall, I said I'd be short. I think a lot of things have already been covered, but we have the lowest council tax. It is the lowest council tax, which we set, Rushcliffe Borough Council. All of these members sitting here don't set the council tax elsewhere, including Nottinghamshire County Council. So it is the lowest in the county and lowest 25% in the country. We are debt-free, so we're not burdened with servicing debt to stop us spending additional monies from in-year efficiencies on DFGs or other areas we deem necessary. We are investing, we're improving our services, £27 million is the figure you've seen in the budget. And actually, we are future-proofing. That's precisely what we're doing, which I heard right at the beginning of this session. I think that is based on diligent, prudent decision-making. And what you have in front of you today is a budget which will continue to deliver services for our residents, continue to invest in our infrastructure. We certainly are not asset stripping, and our reserves are not being depleted. Our reserves are actually being used very, very purposely to give us that stability, to future-proof, and to enable us to invest in, for example, information technology or other areas. So, you know, those are all being done in a rational and sensible way. And this is in the context of the lowest business rate baseline, which I mentioned, and we are number 7 in the table, yet we have a balanced budget. We are not in debt. We are not forecasting a deficit, a balanced budget over 5 years. And just to remind everybody, we lost 20% of our take from Rushcliffe on Saw Power Station as well. So I think with all of that in mind, I'm glad to say this is not a royal flush. We are future-proofing, and it's not a race to the bottom. We are clearly at the top. Thank you.
Bang on 7.5 minutes. Councillor Clark to sum up, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And as I want to, Councillor Gaunt slightly stole my thunder because he talked about thanks. Well, I want to thank Councillor Walker because I thank the Labour group for bringing this amendment because Councillor Gaunt and I in past years have had a bit of a robust exchange about not proposing an alternative budget. So I can't criticise the Labour group for proposing an alternative. So on that basis, thank you for doing that. Just while I'm still talking to, referring to Councillor Walker, Councillor Verdi did mention it. It's worth mentioning at the end because I couldn't grasp what she was talking about the major assets being sold. Now she's referred to page 21. It is about if, and we haven't identified any major assets to be disposed of. So that's a myth. Councillor Thomas talked about West Bridgeford projects. And the finances. Not all the projects necessarily relate just to West Bridgeford. Some of the projects are enjoyed by all members in the borough. Councillor Birch talked about the council tax rate, and again, I am so pleased that the Rushcliffe Borough Council continues to have the lowest rate of council tax in the county, and what County Hall's decisions are has no relevance to what this council decides to set its own council tax at. So that's a completely different debate. It's a bit rich to give a lecture about conservatism. Keeping council tax as low as possible is conservatism. Councillor Chaplin talked about consultation and and many members have talked about the Westbridge Town Council, but Councillor Chaplin referred to consulting. That may have been a good idea, but we're going to be consulting with the public on local government reorganisation over the summer. So that definitely would be confusing if we were also consulting on a town council as well. So, Mr. Mayor, because we are financially well managed, we don't get the tens of millions of levelling up funding that other district councils get, which far outweigh the new homes bonus that we receive that may not be around very much longer. So I am absolutely proud that this council is debt free, because it means we're not servicing any debt, unlike other councils which have to spend a lot of money just to pay interest on the debts that they build up. And so I'm proud that we have a virtually balanced budget over 5 years, which is the envy of other councils. And on some reference to reserves, as an example, we're not sitting on climate change reserve. We've identified £1.5 million on relevant projects which take time to actually come to fruition. Mr. Mayor, I won't take up any more of the time. I hope that people will vote for this. I sincerely believe that this is a great budget, and thank once again Peter Linfield and his team for the great work that they have done. And I sincerely hope that everybody will vote in favour of this budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. The budget proposed by Councillor Clark, we'll go to the vote now, will be voted on first and will be a recorded vote. And councillors will be asked to call out their votes when asked to do so by the monitoring officer. If this vote is carried, there will be no vote on the alternative budgets. Sarah.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll call each councillor by name. If you can please say if you're voting for, against or abstaining. Councillor Barney?
For.
Councillor Billing?
Against.
Councillor Birch?
Against.
Councillor Bird?
Against.
Councillor Brennan?
For.
Councillor Brown?
For.
Councillor Butler?
For.
Councillor Calvert?
Against.
Councillor Chaplin?
Against.
Councillor Chewins?
Against.
Councillor Clark?
For.
Councillor Cumberlack?
For.
Councillor Della?
Against.
Councillor Eddiebean?
For.
Councillor Ellis?
For.
Councillor Fletcher?
Against.
Councillor Gaunt?
Against.
Councillor Giorgio? Councillor Grocock?
Against.
Councillor Inglis?
For.
Councillor Richard Mallender?
Against.
Councillor Sue Mallender? Councillor Mason? Councillor Om?
For.
Councillor Perec? Councillor Phillips? Apologies, I didn't hear that. Thank you. Councillor Plant? Councillor Polenta? Councillor Regan?
For.
Councillor Solomon?
For.
Councillor Thomas? Councillor Upton?
For.
Councillor Verdi?
For.
Councillor Jan Walker? Councillor Rex Walker?
For.
Councillor Way?
Against.
Councillor Wells?
For.
Councillor Gordon Wheeler,
4.
Councillor Jonathan Wheeler,
4.
and Councillor Williams.
4.
I declare the vote is carried.
Yes. Yeah, could you
Yes,
just read out
I
the
will.
numbers? Just 23
There was there's 23 for and 17 against. Thank you. We'll quickly move on then to item 11 on the agenda. Council tax resolution. We nearly had a revolution. I don't know which is best. Councillor Clark, please.
Excellent, Mr. Mayor. Can we have more details of this revolution? I think that's one of your better ideas. Anyway, back to agenda item 11 and council tax resolution. This is really just a technical exercise because we have discussed all this in the previous item. We've discussed all the various finances, and so this just relates to bringing together the agreed borough council tax, the special expense budget requirements, including those of the parish and town councils, the police, the fire, and the county council. So I won't delay you any further. I'll move the recommendations on page 185, which relates to the council tax rates as set out on Appendix A. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor Verdi, you wish to second it.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You reserve your right to speak.
And I reserve the right.
Thank you. Councillor Polenta, you have indicated you wish to speak on behalf of the Labour Party.
Hello, yeah. If I were a Conservative councillor, I would be voting for today's budget and council tax resolution without hesitation. After all, they go hand in hand. Both reflect a lack of ambition and a failure to pursue redistributive policies. But let's be clear, they don't reflect our vision as a Labour group. In fact, they stand in direct opposition to what we believe in. Our priority, as we extensively said before, is not just to balance the books, but to provide public services to meet social needs as a minimum. That is why we will not be voting for this proposed council tax resolution. Council tax, in which Buckingham Palace pays less than an average house in Hartlepool, is one of the most regressive taxes in UK. Someone living in a property worth 100k pay around 5 times as much council tax relative to their property as someone living in a property worth 1 million. It punishes those on the lowest incomes while allowing the wealthiest to contribute a smaller share relative to their earnings. For some in our communities, council tax is not just an administrative burden. It is a major cause of financial hardship. And yet, we are still operating within a system that has barely changed since the early 90s, despite widespread recognition that is outdated, unfair, and in urgent need of reform. This tax, based on property valuations frozen in time from 1991, does not reflect today's housing market. It does not consider people's ability to pay, and it certainly does not reflect the principles of fairness, justice that should underpin how we fund local services. Low-income households in Rushcliffe and across the country pay a far greater share of their earnings in council tax than the wealthiest. That is not an accident, it is a fundamental flaw in the system. And then there are the regional disparities. This system punishing areas with lower property values, forcing councils to set higher rates just to fund basic services. As a result, people in less affluent areas pay more, while those in multi-million-pound homes contribute comparatively less. This is not fairness, it is injustice. What kind of system is this? A system where those with the least carry the heaviest burden. A system where those who can afford to pay more are protected from doing so. a system that has not been meaningfully reformed since John Major introduced it to replace the disastrous poll tax. We should be pushing for a fairer model of local taxation. This could be a proportional property tax, an income tax, a combination of the above. But at the very least, council tax bands must be revalued to reflect the reality of today's housing market. The question we must ask is this: do you want a tax system that entrenches inequality or one that redistributes fairly? Do you want councils that can properly fund public services or one that forces to privatize? We must push for reform. We need to be more radical. We need to look afresh at how we fund local government going forward. We must demand an alternative that does not push the poorest further into hardship while shielding those who can afford to contribute more. Council tax is broken. If we don't challenge this injustice, we become complicit in it. The time has come to fight for a fairer alternative.
Thank you, Councillor Palenza. Does anybody wish to speak on this? If not, I will go back. Sorry, Councillor Birch.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be very brief. I wanted to use this opportunity to try and address the issues of tax communications from this council. Touching on some of the points that were raised earlier, obviously we've explained that we are a small fraction of our overall council tax. I believe, and I believe that other members believe, that we should, as a council, be communicating more clearly to residents which authority is responsible for what. We are a tax authority. Voters see Rushcliffe Borough Council on headed paper through when they receive letters through the post regarding their taxes. They pay Rushcliffe Borough Council from their bank accounts. I have great concerns over how tax is communicated to our residents, and I do hope we can have a democratic debate about this. And I invite Conservative councillors to opine on that matter. But I do have great reservations about how we communicate tax with residents, and I'll be voting against this, and I would like it noted that I voted against it, please.
Thank you, Councillor Birch. Anybody else wish to speak? If not, Councillor Verdi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have very much to say. As Councillor Clark says, this is a technical report, and it's laid out in a particular way to comply with legislation. Some of the points generally about council tax policy as a whole is something I don't want to sort of bring into the debate here. Communications, I'm all for positive communications. That is something I'm sure the offices can look at as a general, but as far as this is concerned, I don't have very much to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Verdi. We'll go to the vote then. We're voting on a recommendation on page 185. It is recommended that the council approves the council tax resolution for 2025-26 as detailed at Appendix A. All those in favour? All those against? Any abstentions? One. It's 27 for, 11 against and 1 abstention. Thank you. Now move to agenda item 12, the Greater Nottingham Strategic Plan. Councillor Upton, please, to move.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tonight is yet again an important milestone in our statutory duty to review and adopt a new Greater Nottingham Strategic Plan. This little thing of the 300+ pages. Members may recall that I presented essentially a very similar draft at full council in September last year. But since then, there have been important issues that have required some changes to the plan, and it is these that I will focus on this evening. These issues are: 1, revisions made to the National Planning Policy Framework. 2, the 12th of March deadline for publishing the revised draft strategic plan with the updated housing targets. And 3, the decision of Gedling Borough Council to withdraw from the partnership preparing the plan. So firstly, the different transitional arrangements were published on the 12th of December last year, after I spoke on this item in September. And we cannot proceed towards adoption of the plan without making some revisions to our proposed housing targets. I apologise now if I get a bit detailed here. I'll try and keep it relatively simple. In order to proceed on the transitional route, we must now meet at least 80% of the government's annual housing target for Rushcliffe, rather than the previous requirement of no more than 200 dwellings below our annual housing target. So our revised housing target would need to increase by 600 homes over the planned period, taking our target up from 11,360 homes to 11,960. And these figures are set out in Table 1 of the report. The effect of this is that the degree to which our housing land supply exceeds the target over the planned period is fairly obviously reduced to 2,184, as set out in Table 2. But I firmly believe that this tool provides us with sufficient protection to maintaining a 5-year land supply, and we don't need to allocate any new housing land in Rushcliffe within the planned period. Secondly, item 2, if the 12th of March deadline for publishing the plan is not met, and that ain't far away, then a substantially revised or indeed a new local plan would need to be prepared instead. We effectively start again and would probably have to identify several new housing sites within the borough. Thirdly, in December last year, Gedling Borough Council surprised us all by deciding to withdraw from the partnership preparing this Greater Nottingham plan, and has said, and I quote in their letter, the council, Gedling, considers that it is in the best interest of the borough and its residents to progress a Gedling local development plan. Well, good luck with that one. This decision has resulted in officers going through the whole of our plan and removing all references to Gedling Borough. And having gone through it twice, I think they've done a pretty good job. But a prize to anybody that sees a Gedling reference. Our revised detailed plan is contained in Appendix 1 of this report, which is effectively that 300-page plus document, and it gives extensive information on the significant number of policies that form part of the plan. Frankly, very little changes. Our previous plan, as I said before, was adopted in 2014. It's critical we now update it, as the new national government has directed that all councils in the UK are to have an up-to-date plan in place. This is a major piece of work that covers the period up to 2041, and it sets out strategic policies and proposals to sustainable development growth, including housing, but not just housing, employment and infrastructure across the Greater Nottingham Plan area. This plan has been prepared following significant rounds of public consultation and several scrutiny meetings of our cross-party local development forum, where at its recent meeting a couple of weeks ago, it was unanimously resolved to support this revised draft plan. And I hope that this evening all councillors will vote for this, given the cross-party endorsement, the national urgency to deliver homes, and the very negative alternative, which I've just alluded to. If we don't approve this report this evening, then the transitional window offered by the government will be lost, and the strategic plan will not be able to proceed in its current form. Preparation of a new plan would have to start all over again, which could take us several years, and this council would be without an up-to-date plan. This is important, because if we don't have a plan, we have the risk of a speculative, unplanned housing development on unallocated land in Rushcliffe, and almost certainly it would weaken this council's ability to deal effectively with all planning applications, and we have experience of this unplanned development, do we not? If approved this evening, this draft plan will be published for another 6-week public consultation. I get rather involved with public consultations. There are a lot of them, are they? But this would follow, and then there would be a public examination by a government-appointed independent planning inspector to determine whether it's sound, complies with national policy, and is legally compliant. If approved, the councils will then be able to adopt this plan as part of their respective statutory development plans, probably in the autumn of 2026. Once adopted, the plan will replace our core strategy, but the 2019 Rushcliffe Local Plan Part 2 would still remain as part of our development plan until such time as its policies are reviewed and superseded by subsequent local plan documents. Economic and employment land is carefully looked at in Draft Policy 5, and I mentioned that when I spoke in September last year. I'll not go through all that detail, and I'll just say that Policy 10 is in there again, which is current at the moment because it talks about the highest design standards and materials, and our design code has just completed its public consultation, and I will bring that back to Cabinet in the near future. So in conclusion, I urge everyone here in the chamber this evening to vote for the recommendations A to D of this report that are set out in item 2 of the report. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Upton. Councillor Richard Butler.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy to second the recommendation.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Calvert, you wish to speak on behalf of the Labour Party?
Yeah. Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, at full council last September, the Labour group voted in favour of publication of the draft plan and the subsequent 6-week consultation period. We said at the time that this did not mean a wholesale approval of the plan itself, and that we would be an active participant in the consultation. And that is exactly what we did. We made responses to 15 of the 31 policies. Some of these were expressions of support, while others were raising concerns and recommendations for change. I just want to say, give a few examples, 5 examples of some of the responses we made to give a feel, because we've had a lot of talk about process. Just thought to mention a few policies. Our first example is we strongly supported the Greater Nottingham Strategic Partnership approach to the plan making, but we're disappointed that Rushcliffe Borough and Hucknall, as a Hucknall part of Ashfield district, had reasons to plough their own furrow. We now have Gedling Borough dropping out because they have to find additional housing sites. There is little doubt that this is another example of the inadequacy of the 2-tier local government system to provide effective strategic plan making. A second thing that we mentioned was we recommended much closer coordination in the future among local authorities in the plan area with a pooling of expertise, particularly when negotiating with developers and management companies. And may I say that this council has considerable experience and expertise in this area. The third example was we understand that the majority of responses focused on policy 31, which is the strategic allocation in Gampston, north of Tollerton. We strongly supported that the design and layout of the entire site will be determined by a comprehensive master planning and design code process. And the report that we're talking about today, in paragraph 412, says that there will be some limited changes to the policy 31 to provide greater clarity in respect of infrastructure delivery on the site. We as the Labour group will look at those in greater detail and make our response. Example 4 is that we supported the policy on the mix of housing, which addresses the need for more family housing, including larger family housing in Nottingham City. However, we recommended a new policy to address the opposite housing imbalance that we have in Rushcliffe Borough, where there is a very high percentage of 4+ bedroom owner-occupied homes and a low percentage of social rent and affordable housing. Final example is that we identified the importance of a few specific transport infrastructure schemes that were necessary to ensure that walking, cycling and public transport connects large new developments to local community services, retail and employment. These included a foot and cycleway bridge over the A46, providing direct connection between the former RAF Newton strategic allocation and Bingham, and a similar facility across the A52 linking the east of Gamston site to West Bridgford. We also supported the proposal to safeguard land that a future net tram system extension into and through the strategic allocation site of Clifton to allow access further to the south, subject to feasibility studies. But we as a Labour group support the recommendations in this report and will review and update our own previous comments over the forthcoming consultation period. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Calvert. Does anybody wish to speak on this subject? Councillor Way.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to thank the officers for their extensive work on this report, particularly the last-minute changes they've had to make following the withdrawal of Gedling Council. We're still calling it Greater Nottingham Strategic Partnership, but one wonders if it's getting lesser and lesser. It's important that this plan is adopted and goes ahead so we can avoid having to start again under different rules, which will disadvantage our borough. It's incumbent upon us to do as much as we can, while we can, to preserve Rushcliffe so that it continues to be a good place to live before our ability to do so is removed. We will be voting for this plan.
Thank you, Councillor Way. Councillor Chewing.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I'd like to thank officers' time. There's been a significant amount of work done previously in preparing the plan, but also obviously the last-minute amendments. So thank you for the officers' time in doing that. Just quickly, Councillor Upton made mention about the LDF endorsement. The endorsement was to take it to full council and let the council decide. It was an endorsement that the contents was approved. So we'll have that clarity. So, councillors, we find ourselves here again tonight debating the Great Nottingham Strategic Plan, not by choice, but because we're being forced to increase our housing allocation by an additional 600 homes for Rushcliffe. This combined with the withdrawal of Gedling Borough Council from the plan. However, this is a moment that presents an opportunity to reconsider our position, not just on the principle of the plan, but critically on the sites we are allocating for housing. I've made no secret my disappointment around the removal of Nottingham City Airport, better known to us as Tolton Airfield. I've also spoken before about its vital role, not just for the aviation, but for our regional economy, training, emergency services, and future air mobility. And now, just yesterday, we've learned that Vestry Homes, should I say, have moved to serve notice on tenants at the airfield. Businesses that provide critical services and employment are now being pushed out even before any formal approval of this plan or the outstanding plan applications. I asked this council what assessment has been made on the impact on the air ambulance. Will this decision put lives at risk? We must reject the idea that housing numbers alone dictate our planning future. We are being asked to approve a document that would send this plan to consultation. Why should we send out a plan that we already know is flawed? This is our moment to take a stand, to say that we do not support the loss of this vital infrastructure. I strongly urge all councillors to vote against sending this document to consultation. Instead, let us put forward a revised plan that removes the airfield from the housing allocation and actively works to protect it for future generations. Given the significance of this decision, I formally request a recorded vote so we can be accountable to our residents, our businesses, and our future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chewing. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In view of the time and the fact that we've still got important business to transact, regrettably, I'd like to propose that we extend the timing of the meeting to 10:30.
Thank you. In that case, I'll put it to the vote.
I need a seconder first. Has he got a second?
Have you got a seconder for that, Councillor Clark? Yeah. All those in favour? Okay. Anybody against? Any abstentions? Councillor Richard Mallender next, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I thought you jumped over me for a moment there and sort of said no. I thought it was to just curtail the debate and go straight for the vote. As if. Okay. I'd just like to say I totally hear what Councillor Turing was saying about the issue around the airport. I guess, like many of you, have also received some late email about the amount of potentially radioactive material from dials that were on scrapped World War II aircraft. There may be an issue on the Tolton Airport site. I don't know, but obviously developers are going to have to sort of make good and do exploratory digs there to find out exactly what's happening and if there is some problems with that site. I do think that we have been around this kind of consultation, local plan, housing allocation a lot of times in this council in the past. We even tried to do it independently, I think, during the coalition government, came back with our own plan, which was then said, no, we have to keep to the same housing allocation targets that were put in place under the East Midlands Assembly or East Midlands Development Agency. However long ago was that now? I occasionally meet people who used to work for that. Most of them are retired now. I do think that we need to sort of get this done. Oh, so sorry. but possibly not all of them. Not all. However, easy. However, I do think we do need to press ahead, put this out to consultation. If people want to sort of make changes or proposals to the housing allocation, then they're perfectly within their rights to put forward alternative ideas and arrangements, up to and including taking Tollerton Airport out, because I totally get the issues that people have concerns around that as an asset and a viable business in the area, and with the air ambulance as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mallard. Anybody else wish to speak?
Can I make?
Devine.
Yeah, sorry. Just a point of order or a point of fact, actually. I understood that the air ambulance flew from the A46 heliport, and they certainly go over my house regularly.
No, it was actually fly out of Tollerton.
Okay.
Yeah. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wasn't going to speak, but just for to clarify information, it wouldn't be possible to take bits out of the plan because that would mean the whole thing would fail and start again. So the time to raise these issues would be at the inquiry time. And just for reference, the air ambulance that operates out of the Wigberpool A46 base is for Leicestershire and Warwickshire, and the Notts Links air ambulance operates out of RAF Wellington, and we are in discussion at the moment with the air ambulance about their proposals for altering their arrangements and for temporary arrangements and then ongoing more permanent arrangements. But in the meantime, the developers have granted them an extension of time in order for those discussions to continue. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Clark, thank you. Councillor Thomas.
Could I just suggest, please, that if this motion is passed, that under paragraph D, the Director for Development and Economic Growth with the portfolio holder have the ability to make minor editing changes? And could I suggest that the issue of contamination on the Gampston site and relevant conditions and so on be looked at during that process? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Anybody else wish to speak? If not, I'll go to Councillor Buckler, who reserved his right to speak.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, there's been a lot of thanks given this evening to officers, and I'd also like to thank all the members of the group itself, the LDF group itself, because as you can see from the thickness of the report, it's a mega piece of work, and as colleagues across the board have said, we've been working on this and various versions of it for many years, and on it goes. As it says in the report, and as we've heard this evening, it's pretty much, well, it is a requirement that we have a plan in place to submit. Time is rapidly running out to get that in, and as again has been pointed out, there will be a much needed opportunity for anyone to respond to the consultation, whether we're talking about specific sites or any other aspect of it. So there is still a long way to go, I would suggest, with this plan. It's a shame that Gedling chose to pull out because, as it says in one of the paragraphs in the report, 5.1, one of the reports, it is good practice and an expectation that different authorities will work together to produce a combined plan. I don't necessarily agree with the terminology that Councillor Calvert referred to regarding two-tier, or the positives or negatives of two-tier, because it's not strictly speaking two-tier. This plan has been put together by the current second tier of local government, and on the whole do a good job. But that's just a technicality, really. So it is important that we get this through tonight. We've heard that the discussion at the LDF group certainly was an agreement to take it to the stage we're at now, to go to the next stage, to consultation. I got the distinct feeling, though, on the generally speaking, the LDF group was, for the vast majority, I think, were quite happy with the, well, not happy, but in agreement with the reports being put forward. So, and the other thing, very briefly, just to mention, is we all understandably get very exercised and concentrate and talk about housing all the time, don't we? But of course, in a local plan like this, you're not just talking about housing, but you're talking about everything else that comes with it. So we all talk about the essential infrastructure, which is absolutely crucial. So whether we're talking about the roads, the schools and other services, all form part of a local plan. And if you don't have a local plan in place, then the day could easily come the various speculative developers would come along and say, yeah, you've not got a local plan, we want to build whatever here, there, wherever, and they would not necessarily be compelled to bring any infrastructure with it. So I hope the majority of colleagues can support this next stage. And as I say, there is still a way to go, and everybody, public, councillors, anyone will be able to, and I would suggest be encouraged to respond to the consultation. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Rushcliffe. Councillor Upton, do you wish to add anything to that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm conscious of time. I'll be very brief, but to echo what my friend Councillor Butler's just said, there is still a long way to go. I would suggest there's an even longer way to go if we don't approve it this evening, because it takes us right back to square one, and a lot more time and effort will be spent on the plan. I'm not going to go through all the detail. I mean, it's a decision. The 12th of March is not that far away. We need to make a decision. We either carry on moving forward with the government's transitional arrangements, 80% of the target that they put forward, or we go all the way back with 100% and have to find more housing sites in the borough, which I personally believe a lot of our residents don't want any more. I'm often quoting, enough is enough. So I also pick up the comments about Tolleton Airfield. I'm not going to dwell on that one. This is not the appropriate place or the time to discuss any individual site within that plan. The time is, if we approve it this evening, it goes to public consultation. Anybody can then make a written or make a written representation. And when it comes to examination by the inspector, they have the opportunity to book a slot to come and speak to that inquiry face to face and elaborate on their concerns either for or against any particular site in the plan. And any particular site in the plan, whether it's contamination or not, or alleged contamination or not, or whatever reasons, that's part of the planning process. That's the stage where a developer or an applicant should make representations to the planning department about their concerns, and it will be debated at the planning committee or whatever. So I'll stop there. As I say, it is a key decision. It's an important decision. Move forward. or move a long way back. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Upton. A recorded vote has been requested, and I just to remind members what we're voting on. The recommendation is on page 195 to 196, items A, B, C, and D. Sarah.
Thank you, Mayor. So same procedure as before. I'll read out names one at a time, and if you can tell me how you're going to vote. So Councillor Barney. Apologies, who's left? Councillor Billen.
For.
Sorry, that was 4. Thank you. Councillor Birch.
Against.
Councillor Bird. 4. Councillor Brennan.
4.
Councillor Brown.
4.
Councillor Butler.
4.
Councillor Calvert.
4.
Councillor Chaplin. 4. Councillor Chewins.
Against.
Councillor Clark.
4.
Councillor Cumberlack.
4.
Councillor Della. 4. Councillor Eddyveen.
4.
Councillor Ellis.
4.
Councillor Fletcher. 4. Councillor Gaunt.
4.
Councillor Giorgio. 4. Councillor Grocock.
4.
Councillor Inglis.
4.
Councillor Richard Mallender.
4.
Councillor Sue Mallender.
4.
Councillor Mason.
4.
Councillor Om. 4. Councillor Parak.
4.
Councillor Phillips.
4.
Councillor Plant. 4. Councillor Polenta. 4. Councillor Regan.
4.
Councillor Solomon. 4. Councillor Thomas. 4. Councillor Upton.
4.
Councillor Verdi.
4.
Councillor Jem Walker. 4. Councillor Rex Walker.
4.
Councillor Way. 4. Councillor Wells.
4.
Councillor Gordon Wheeler.
4.
Councillor Jonathan Wheeler.
4.
And Councillor Williams.
4.
That's 37 for and 2 against.
Could you just remind all councillors that they haven't gone 10 o'clock not to use the doors into the leisure
Yeah.
centre?
Just to remind councillors, it's been asked, when you leave tonight, can you leave by that door and not that one, because you'll set the building alarms off, please. So make sure you go through the door there. Thank you. Moving on to item 11, amendments to the Constitution. Councillor Brennan to move, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have the statutory duty to keep our constitution up to date and to review it at least annually. The recommendations that are contained in the paper have been considered at length by the cross-party governance scrutiny group, the planning committee working group, and relevant officers. I'll put you trying to attract my attention. So the paper sets out the proposed amendments in red and the scrutiny group's amendments in blue in the appendix. These amendments are designed to improve the smooth running of council meetings and the conduct of our business. It's for each council to determine their own constitution, to help determine the context and the type of business we wish to consider. There's not a one-size-fits-all. This is a matter for us to decide here in this chamber. The details of the proposed amendments are set out in the appendix to the paper, but in summary, the key changes are that when a recorded vote is requested, it must be supported by at least 4 councillors, including the member asking for the vote. Questions at council must be related to any matter for which the council has responsibilities, statutory powers or duties. A councillor may only submit 1 question per meeting, and if that councillor is not present, the question will not be put. If a question cannot be put due to time constraints, a written answer will be provided after the meeting rather than the question being carried forward to the next meeting. Going forward, no councillor may give notice of more than 1 motion at any meeting where motions are to be presented. Motions must be about matters for which the council has a responsibility, statutory duty or power, and must be lawful. And finally, where a councillor is unable to stand at the relevant points of the meeting, the mayor should be notified in advance but that notice need only be given once if that situation and reason for not being able to stand is ongoing. That's it in summary. I won't take up any more time, so can I please move the recommendation that the council adopts the amendments to the constitution as set out in Appendix 1. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Brennan. Councillor Edivine.
Yeah, I'd like to second the recommendation, Mr Mayor, and reserve the right to speak.
Thank you. Councillor Polenta.
Our constitution should provide the framework through which we, as councillors, can openly challenge policy, seek consensus where possible, and when necessary, stand firm in our difference. I agree, at the heart of any democratic institution is its constitution. It's not just a set of rules, but a tool to enable the free flow of debate, the exchange of ideas, and the rigorous scrutiny of decisions that shape our community. It exists to ensure that all voices, regardless of political persuasions, are heard and taken seriously. But democracy is not just confined to the chamber, it belongs to our residents. This council chamber is a public space, and that principle must be upheld. It is within this context that I would like to raise my objection to 3 proposed constitutional changes. First one, on recorded votes. We are a council made of groups of all sizes, including single councillors and small groups of 2 or 3. While most of us might support a recorded vote when requested by a minority group, the principle should be clear. Any councillor should have the right to request a recorded vote without the unnecessary requirement for 4 members to second it. Every vote cast in this chamber should be open to public accountability. That is what democracy demands. Second, on questions. The proposed change states that where a question cannot be answered in the time allocated, a written response will be provided after the meeting. I don't think we can support this. The questions raised by councillors, sometimes on behalf of residents, are not mere formalities. They are a vital part of democratic scrutiny. They should be heard in public, not pushed into private correspondence. Breaking the link between the public space of full council and the accountability of questioning weakens our democratic process. Third, and most importantly, on restricted the scope of motions. The proposal to limit motions to matters strictly within the council's statutory duties is more than a procedural change. It is a fundamental shift that would weaken our democracy and narrow debate. Yes, sometimes motions in this chamber are chosen for political theatre, but the answer is not to shut down debate. It is to reclaim this chamber as a space for meaningful political engagement. Local government does not operate in a vacuum. We are embedded in a broader social, economic, and political realities of the world. Issues such as climate action, divestment from fossil fuels, ethical procurement, ethical investment, migration policy, workers' rights, and international solidarity may not fall neatly within our statutory remit, but they are deeply relevant to the people we represent. We are elected to represent the people, to voice their concerns, their values, and their aspirations. Climate breakdown does not stop at borough boundaries. The cost of living crisis does not care about council jurisdictions. Wars, supply chains, and the ethics of public money are not abstract concerns. They shape our daily lives and the future our children will inherit. Across the country, councils have passed motions supporting divestment from fossil fuels, ethical procurement, fair wages, and standing in solidarity with communities in crisis, with Ukraine, with Palestine. Did those councils rewrite national or foreign policy? No, they did not. But they send a message that the people they represent will not be silent. That is the power of local government if we choose to use it. So I urge this council tonight, do not allow restrictions that restrict debate. Let us be a local government that listens, that speaks out, and that acts, not just within our statutory duties, but with the moral responsibility we owe to our communities and to future generations.
Thank you, Councillor Polenta. 3 people have asked to speak. If you can keep it very brief, please. I'm very conscious of the time. We've only got 15 minutes and we've got to vote. So Councillor Way, please, first. Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My initial reaction to the proposal to reduce the scope of member motions was just pure joy. No more listening to party political point scoring or lightly disguised electioneering. But then I started thinking about it. At the last council meeting, we sat through 4 motions. As far as I was concerned, 3 of them were tiresome in the extreme, and we could have done without them. Councillor Chewing's motion about roads would have been rolled out by the constitution change, as it's a county responsibility, and so we would have been spared the discomfort of Councillor Clark's elaborate hat-swapping act. Councillor Birch's motion about farmers would have generated 3 actions directly within Rushcliffe's remit, and so presumably would have been accepted. Only 1 point from Councillor Clark's motion about... But Councillor Inglis's excellent and well-researched motion on car cruising was endorsed by both sides of the chamber and well worth the debate and subsequent lobbying actions identified. I guess it would have been ruled out by this change, and that would have been a great shame. So on reflection, I agree with Councillor Polenta, and I think there is a role for debate on important issues that are not our direct responsibility, where it's valuable for us to come to a joint view, express it, and agree to put pressure on other agencies to act on issues that concern our residents. Separating the wheat from the chaff is a difficult task, and perhaps different criteria are needed than those suggested. One way to deal with this might be to leave paragraph 4.40 as it is, but to make a modification in paragraph 4.41. This could give councillors the opportunity to submit motions not directly related to Rushcliffe's responsibilities, but also allow the Chief Executive discretion to reject them. I have comments on most of the other recommendations as well, because I won't go through those now given the time constraints. But I do think it needs to go back to governance scrutiny because further work is needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Councillor Birch.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be brief because of the time. I sat on the governance scrutiny group and we had a very robust discussion, but I do want to repeat some of the points that were made there. I do have concerns, as has been said tonight, about stopping motions about topics outside of our immediate purview. There is value in that, in bringing those sorts of motions. It helps us to represent our constituents better. It's educational. It allows a democratic debate on issues that otherwise would not be given a democratic debate. And I think it's a shame that if we pass this, we will become a minority of councils in Nottinghamshire in having that stipulation. With regards to 1 question per meeting, I agree with that. Obviously, we do need some sensible changes and tweaks to get us where we want to get to and get through the business. With regards to recorded votes, I put forward in the meeting the possibility that the option of having it so that the number of councillors required to call a recorded vote was in line with the smallest group in the council, which in this case is the Liberal Democrats. The Liberal Democrats got 13% of the vote at the Borough Council elections, and I think it's unjust that they've not got the opportunity now to call a recorded vote. Also, recorded votes serve a very important role in holding power to account. It is important. It is a tool for us as opposition councillors to use. Case in point, we brought a motion on Bingham's car park, which was voted down. And what I did with that motion, I outlined all of the things that I'd heard Conservative councillors saying over the years, including making an offer to buy the parcel of land by the railway station. I put it all in a motion. I said, go on then, vote for it. Called a recorded vote, and all of the Conservatives voted against for it, as amazingly did Labour, actually, as it happens. And this is exactly why it's important. I brought along a piece of election literature from Councillor Clark's election in 2021. Looking delightful on the front there. Your priorities are my priorities. Number 1 priority for Councillor Clark in 2021. I will keep campaigning for a new long-term car park close to Bingham railway station to increase parking for both shoppers and train passengers. And he not only did not take...
So can we stick to the debating question, please,
I'll
on the
explain how it's relevant
constitution?
to debate, yes. For reasons of time, I'll make progress. Thank you.
Can we stick to the point, please?
The point is, by calling a recorded vote, I've now got on record that Councillor Clark did not fulfil his election pledge, and he actively voted against Bingham's new car park. And that is vital for transparency, that is vital for accountability, that is vital for democracy. That is wholly relevant, I think, to this discussion. So I am saddened that we are now limited to 4 councillors required to call a recorded vote. As a matter of principle, I say to every councillor on this side of the aisle, if anybody wants to call a recorded vote, this group will support you. So you have 2 votes to go along with you, no matter what the motion is. I think we need more accountability, more democracy here. And frankly, I must be honest, I think it smacks of desperation and not liking being held to account. I've noticed that some of you cannot handle being held to account and you don't like it. Well, that's democracy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Birch. Councillor Richard Mallender.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And again, in the interest of brevity and sort of keeping to time, I would say I wholeheartedly agree with the comments made by the previous speakers, particularly Councillor Bunch and Councillor Thomas. Inevitably, in our debates in this chamber, we range far and wide and beyond the things that are just the remit of this council. I think it's useful. I think it gives context. I think it's helpful to make us make sound decisions about the things that we do have responsibility for, and that's why I will not be supporting the proposed changes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mallender. Now, due to the time constraint as well, I'm going to go straight to Councillor Ellervine, please, who reserved his right to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will try and be brief. Obviously, I chaired the Governance Scrutiny Committee that considered these. We did listen to the arguments that were put forward, and we took each of the changes to the Constitution on an individual basis. And the result was that, you know, we put these proposals forward. And I know people didn't agree with all of them. I personally, the last meeting we had, I can remember walking out of the chamber and someone on the other side of this chamber said, why can't we just debate things that we actually can do something about? And I have to say that's my sentiment too. I do understand what people are saying about being the wider variety, but actually we're here to serve residents and we're here to make residents to make sure we deliver for residents, and that's it. So I definitely support the proposals and the recommendation, and frankly a recorded vote, I think Councillor Birch has just demonstrated exactly how it's used as for his own election campaign, and I'm not interested in his election campaign. So I'm more than happy to have the requirement for 4 people.
Councillor Birch, what point of order by law, please?
Which is it? That recorded votes are necessary to hold political power to account. That was the point I was making. And frankly, I find it insulting that you've used that language. I think you should withdraw that.
Thank you, Councillor Birch. Councillor Ellervine, carry on.
Anyway, I've said what I've got to say. So,
thank you. And Councillor Clark, you have a right to reply to this if you wish. Councillor Brennan, sorry.
It's getting late, Mr. Mayor.
Somebody's printed it wrong.
Thank you. Well, I must say I'm a little bit surprised because this did go through the governance group and these amendments were agreed by that group. So I'm a little bit surprised that so many cross-party members of that group voted for them, but now apparently are unhappy with them. But I will just very briefly respond to some of it. Questions that are brought to council are very often timely and time specific. And in fact, Councillor Gordon, you made the point with your question at the beginning of the council meeting that why did you have to wait for a whole other council meeting before you got an answer to your question? This was supposed to address this sort of matter, so that if you bring a question, it falls off because of lack of time. You will then get an answer in a timely fashion following the end of the meeting, rather than waiting for the question to come back to the next council meeting. So that was the theory behind that. On motions, I don't take the view that we are being constrained to statutory powers only or duties only. I can't remember. Apologies. I think that was can't remember which councillor raised that. But the motion amendment says responsibilities, statutory powers or duties. Responsibilities of the council, I think, is appropriate, but it isn't entirely restrictive. I mean, we know that the responsibilities of the council impact on the members and residents of our communities. So things that impact on our residents and our communities are things that fall within our responsibility. So I don't think it is as constrained as some members seem to be concerned about. I still think it gives you a proper scope to bring something that's relevant and meaningful and important to council, and something for the chief executive to consider. So I think it's absolutely right and proper that we do make clear that we want, and I will say actually, after the last motions that we had, both members from across here and members of the public were asking why on earth we were debating some matters that had absolutely nothing to do with the council or that we could do anything about. So it's an important point, but we're trying to focus it down, not stop debate, not stop democracy, but to focus our efforts and energies on the things that we can most impact upon. And I think that's all I want to say, actually. Thank you. So I would please commend the recommendation to the council.
Thank you, Councillor Brennan. So we'll go to the vote now on this, and it's recommended that the council adopt the proposed revisions to the constitution. All those in favour? All those against? Any abstentions? One abstention.
Very quickly, Mr. Mayor, I would like it on the minutes that I voted against this, please. Thank you.
The numbers
16 again.
Yes, yes,
16 again.
22 for, 16 against. So the motion is carried.
Mr. Mayor, could I just seek clarification? This requires a simple majority to change the constitution, not a 2/3 majority, simple majority.
Yeah. So that concludes our meeting this evening, councillors. Sorry. We're going to go there. It's 10:30. We've got 4 minutes to do it. Go on then.
Go for it. Go for it.
Right, we'll go for it on the request of the leader. No. So we go to item 14. I put my papers away now. There we go. Yeah. Councillor Verdi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will be very, very quick. The report focuses on what is deemed good practice in the sector and the Director of Travel regarding good governance from the Redmond report, which we've heard about in 2019. Unfortunately, implementation was delayed due to COVID. But more recently, as per paragraph 4.4, the government, in its efforts for audit reform, are looking at mandating having an independent member on what they call audit committees, but what we call our governance group. The governance group did consider this, and they supported the idea of having an independent member, but it will be a no voting role, and it's there to support the group in considering key areas of governance in what is quite a technical area. So it's important that we get this right. As per Appendix A, there's a job description, a person specification. There is a remuneration attached to the role, which has been set against baseline benchmarks, including local authorities that we can compare with. So hopefully we'll recruit the right individual, but I fully endorse this proposal, and it will, I'm sure, help the governance group in its responsibilities. With that, I propose a recommendation. I reserve the right to speak, but I will hopefully won't have to.
Councillor John Wheeler, to second. Councillor John Wheeler. Councillor John Wheeler.
I'll be second, reserve right to speak, Chairman.
Does anybody wish to speak on this? No. Councillor Wheeler, you reserve your right. No. So we'll all go to the vote. All those in favour? I think that's unanimous, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah, there we go. That's the first for everything. So we'll conclude the meeting there. Thank you for your attendance. and all being nice to each other as well. And I wish you all a very safe journey, and please use the door there so we don't set the alarms off. Thank you.